All right, welcome everybody to a new series. I don't know if it'll be on Sundays, but tonight it's on Sunday night. Thanks everybody for joining us live for this series. And the goal here is to chat with some Kalashnikov builders, people that build AK-47 pattern rifles. I've known a bunch over the years, and whoops, let me figure out where I've got the chat going here. Okay, so I've got a bunch of builders that I've met and chatted with over the years, and there's a lot to go into the Kalashnikov rifle. Of course, they were built back in the day by the Soviets. They had a bunch of satellite countries that either were forced or decided to use their rifle pattern. So there's variations over time, over calibers, over the different countries. These countries were kind of forced to do it. One of the ways that we won the Cold War was through kind of forcing them to produce just a lot of these things. So they were made in massive quantities. Of course, luckily, we never had to use these things in like a World War III that they're kind of built for. So eventually, even though they have been used quite a bit in military use, most of these rifles that were produced to create World War III were eventually kind of dropped into the civilian market, and a lot of them were chopped up into pieces. So they've got this crazy history, and then they become this iconic rifle. They get distributed throughout the world and eventually start to get disseminated here to the United States, where we have private ownership of firearms and people that appreciate the AK and the Kalashnikov pattern rifles for what they are and where they came from. And we get these parts kits and some commercial guns all coming into the country and creating the reputation of the Kalashnikov. And again, we've got the option to buy now in 2022 to buy a brand new gun off the shelf. You could literally buy guns made in the United States, but for some of us, the Kalashnikov will always be those original guns that were built during the Cold War in order, stockpiled to destroy freedom and capitalism. And for some of us, those guns that have been chopped up, demilitarized, and brought into the country as parts have a special interest and a meaning. And the people that put those together are the Kalashnikov builders that we're going to be talking to, the people that kind of got that stuff rolling and then have taken it to another level. So today we've got John on from M13 Industries. It's a gunsmith in Las Vegas, Nevada. I don't know for certain, so I'm about to ask him when they got started. But we're talking a gunsmith for people that want to put their gun together, a gunsmith for people that have an issue and just need a gunsmith that's focused on the Kalashnikov platform, but also a gunsmith that deals with the international tourism in Vegas, where we've got a totally different situation where guns are being used recreationally by international guests, tourists, and using, having ammo run through them at rates that even military training centers don't have them running through. So we've got a gunsmith on with an incredible amount of insight and knowledge. So thanks, John, for joining us. I'll shut up here for a bit. And if you would give us like an elevator speech about M13 yourself and maybe how you got started, and we'll start from there. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. We officially got our license back in 2012. We were actually in 0702, so we were a manufacturer of standard firearms as well as your NFA controlled items, suppressors, short-barreled rifles, machine guns, stuff like that. We got that stuff back in 2012. We've been primarily sticking to the AK platform, although we also deal in, the PKMs, the RPDs, Galils, PPS H41s, a lot of the Commblock style weapons and other ones too. But we don't do your conventional. I don't really do any pistol work. I don't really do any bolt gun kind of stuff. No, over under side by side shotgun parts, stuff like that. But we do most of your military firearms. We are actually in a building kind of really right. I mean, I look out my front door and I look at the strip, so we're not far from the strip at all. We've actually been in the building since '99. I had a couple other businesses that I've done, and that location worked great for everything. So I kind of got my start in the AK world when I was exposed to it in the military. I went into the Army back in the early '90s. And back then, we were all told, this is the Cold War. You could stand out there and they could shoot you with an AK. It's an inaccurate piece of shit gun. They'll never hit you. You're perfectly fine. It's just a spray and pray gun, which, a lot of the guns we were coming up against at that time, had been shot to, all to hell. And we're almost smoothbore muskets because the rifling were so shot out. But we also saw them, use them very well and very accurately. And so when I got back, back to the States, I was like, you know what, I want to check one of these things out. So I went to my local gun shop and said, hey, I want an AK. And, they weren't really popular at the time. So the gentleman there said, oh, we got these piece of junk Chinese ones here. We're running a special. It's $175. You get one of these AKs, which was a MAK90, and a Spam can of ammo. It's $175. I'm like, oh, for sold. So that was my first AK I ever had, was actually a MAK90. And, you were told it was a piece of junk Chinese gun. Little did I know it was actually one of the better guns you could start out with, because they were actually very well made guns. So I pedunked with it, played with it a little bit. I actually had gotten a flatback version, so I was actually able to buy a stock and jerry rig it on there. And that started my playing with the AK world. Over time, I was always a tinkerer. I've always been into, messing around with mechanical parts. I mean, I owned another business that built race car transmissions. So you get, really tinkering with things like that. So I was always tinkering with the guns, tinkering with them, messing with them, always trying different things. What actually really made them better, and what was just, the usual hogwash of, salesman preach, where somebody would be like, oh, this is the world's greatest whatever, and it was complete junk. So we would try different things, and after a while, I started to go, hey, I think I could build one of these guns. You buy these parts kits; they're cheap. They're $75. Came with a barrel. Headspace was already done. That was everyone all said. The headspace is the hardest part. So it's, we were at the time, kits were coming in with complete barrels, brand new. The barrels still left in them. So I bought one. I put it together. I'll just say, put it together. It ran. I didn't blow my face off. It was kind of a mess, but it ran, and I got the bug bad. Then after that, I was like, oh man, this is fun. I built this gun. So after that, it was a very steep downhill spiral. I was in deep at that point. I started buying as many kits and parts and pieces as I could to put guns together. And then I kind of took a hiatus for a little while. My other business got, kind of took off and took a lot of my time away. And then back in about 2010, one of my buddies was like, hey, why don't you do the gun thing? You do it like professionally. It can't be that hard to get an FFL. And so I started looking into it, and it wasn't that hard. I filed my paperwork, and I got a call from a gentleman at my local ATF branch. Sent chills up your spine, because they introduced themselves as an ATF agent. And he says, yeah, I'm going to come on down and let's have our interview. So he came down and read what I had to do, and did I think I could handle it? And these are the rules you got to follow. You can't do this, you can't do that, but you can do all this. And about 2 or 3 weeks later, in the mail came my FFL, and there we go. I took off from there, and it really started gaining a lot of speed. And like I said, in 2012, when we officially had my license, and it's been steadily growing, nonstop since then.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great, catching us up to speed then. So I have a couple of questions from there. When you kind of mentioned that you got that first Chinese MAK90, and then you got the flat back. So there was those angled backs for a while, and it kind of depends on, I guess, where they came from and when they were imported or whatever. But that made it so that it was probably without too much modification, able to put a standard stock on it and start doing I call it playing Barbie dolls with them. Were you doing that back then with the Chinese one? Or was it until you got the parts kit that you started playing?
No, I started playing with that Chinese one. Unfortunately, a Chinese gun, you're really limited. The handguards and stuff like that are a unique shape for the Chinese guns. I was able to switch the stock out, and like I said, I kind of jerry rigged it in there. The pattern, the screw pattern, is actually different on a Chinese gun than pretty much any other gun. So I just grabbed, shoved another stock in there. Went, oh, well, it's close enough. And I drilled another hole, and there I was with my, 2 different countries of, furniture. But and then I think
and at that time, it wasn't like you were modeling a specific, like I'm trying to make a Romanian. You were just like, I want a different stock on this Chinese gun.
Yeah, exactly.
Do this to the stock to get it in there. I think we were all like that when the assault weapons ban first ended. Is that when we're talking?
Yep. Back in about 94-ish.
Oh, okay. You're talking a lot earlier than me then. So okay.
Yeah.
So you're talking when there's a lot less furniture. Also, you couldn't just
there was
and get options. You found whatever furniture was at a gun show or something.
Yeah, actually, I was actually at that gun store. I bought some, and he had a box of miscellaneous junk, as he called it. And you were rummaged through there, and you held it up, and you would go, "Ah, yeah, give me $5 for that. Give me okay, yeah, give me $10 for that." And I whipped that out, and I think I got a sling and the stock for like $5 or something like that. And I don't honestly don't even remember where the stock came from.
Right on. And they probably didn't know back then. I mean, it might have been a
Yeah,
Mahdi or something, or it might have been somebody put it in a backpack or a duffel bag and it came from somewhere. Who knows?
yeah, I know it is.
This was a gun shop in Vegas. Is the gun
No,
shop
no,
still
actually,
there?
I lived in Southern California at the time.
Oh, okay. So is that gun shop still there? Do you know? So it sounds
No,
like
no, the gentleman that it was an older gentleman that actually did it, and he closed up probably back in I think about mid to late '90s. He
that's too
closed
bad.
up and just he was an older guy and just was kind of doing it to kind of keep himself busy, and I think just retirement sounded too good.
Sure. And that's the problem is that we've got that, right? Like you get somebody who's
Yeah,
doing it because of their passion, not because it's necessarily a thriving business. No one's going to come along and say, "Hey, let me buy this from you because it's such a thriving business." It's more like they're doing it for passion, and it usually ends with them, which is frustrating,
exactly.
especially that kind of gun shop.
Yeah.
Okay, so then you got that first kit. I'm guessing it was a G kit, or am I just assuming?
Nope, it was Romy G. And like I said, you could buy at the time. I don't remember whose receiver it was, but it was a 100% receiver, and I threw that sucker together, and it was like I said, I actually bought one of the kits where they modified a bolt cutter, and you crushed your rivets in there, and it probably took double the number of rivets that it should have because I had no idea what the hell I was doing. And I got it. It got it to work, and it functioned, and it wasn't the prettiest looking things, and the rivets weren't very pretty. But like I said, it didn't blow up my face, and I ran it for probably a good 4 to 5 years. I mean, I shot it for a while, and I kind of wish I was trying to find it. I thought I found it. Guns always circle around. I thought I had found it. By that time, I had moved to Las Vegas, and I had sold it. And I thought I had found it by somebody who was describing it to me, but it turned out it wasn't it. I kind of like to get it back just to have the piece of nostalgia of kind of where it all started.
Yeah, interesting. So then, when you were putting that one together, were you already like in the gunsmith mode, or was this more just hobbyist mode?
This was total hobbyist. It was
But,
probably just
but
some
as a
curious.
machinist, you knew what you were doing. It wasn't like you were guessing how to put it together. You knew how to put
No.
machines
Yeah,
together.
I've
So,
looked at quite a few, and I had the Chinese one, and I had talked to that gentleman also who was at the gunsmith. He wasn't super into AKs, but he knew, hey, this is what you got to do. This is what you got to check, and check this, check that. And he actually, before I shot it, he looked at it and went, that's not pretty, but you won't die.
oh, cool. So I was going to ask, did you have forums? I was in the KCA. So whenever I got first into AKs, I kind of had my first couple of AKs, and then I got into the bayonets because I knew right away I was never going to be able to afford all the AKs, so I could get all the bayonets, and I started going that direction. That got me to a collectors club, and so I had friends that would give me advice. Like when I did my first underfolder, I could bug them on the internet and say, "Hey, what do I do here?" And they kind of attempted to tell me on the text internet, how to do an underfolder. You were, sounds like then just kind of backward engineering that first G kit that you were putting together just based off of, again, like an engineer's or a mechanic's brain, and then looking at the one that you've already got and like, how do I accomplish that out of these parts with this kit? It wasn't like you were going online and asking people.
No, I actually that was actually predate the internet. The internet
Yeah,
hadn't, dial up wasn't available yet.
and that's, I think, what the advice that I got, because I came around about 2004. It sounds like the advice I was getting was from people like yourself then, who then got to the internet and started giving advice to folks like me
Yeah.
who were getting those, because I was getting my parts kit, that same kind of thing when they were, I don't know what that was. I guess a time when there must have just been some kind of release of the Romanian kits or something, because there was a couple of years there where there was a lot of them.
Yeah, that was the golden time when you got the Romanian G kit, because they were not machine guns, they were semi-auto guns, and they were kind of as their almost like their national guard, so they didn't get shot nearly as much as the regular Romanian army shot their guns. And plus, being semi-auto, you don't get the heat into the gun like you do when you have a machine gun. So when you'd get them, I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a Romanian G kit that was just hammered to hell and you couldn't use. I mean, there was some that, okay, so yeah, they got rusted and things like that. But I mean, it's apart from that, those kits were always in great condition, and very low round counts. and you could pretty much throw them together and they were good. I mean, you like that's literally why I didn't know at the time, but that was one of the better kits to start with because, like I said, the head spacing, it was the original barrel, trunnions, receiver, everything was original, and all you had to do was basically change out the receiver and put the old Tapco G2 in there, and you were good to go. You were after you were running.
Yeah, your only variable was the receiver back in the early 2000s, and you either got a receiver that was good to go, like it worked, or you got a receiver that was either kind of wonky with its dimensions or its holes or something, or it wasn't hardened right, and then it would fall apart eventually. But yeah, that was really the variable because, like you say, what we're talking about is you take your AK-47 or AKM, I guess, in Romania, semi-auto, but an AKM, they would usually. I'm trying to remember, but they wouldn't torch cut these. These were saw cut a lot of times. So a nice clean cuts. They chop the receiver in the places they need to, so it's not a machine gun anymore. And then we unrivet them, which is actually a pain in the ass. But you unrivet them, and then you disassemble the barrel. You depopulate the barrel. You put your new receiver together, and you populate the barrel again. And it doesn't. Might sound kind of a lot, but compared to other kits, that was actually super easy. So. So I'm going to kind of fast forward because I know there's people that are listening to this that maybe have no idea what we're talking about because they're kind of new to this, but hopefully it's, giving them something to think about, catch up with us, right? But I also want to let the people know that are kind of know what we're talking about. Going back to those G kits, for people that know what's up, how good were those G kits compared to, I was going to ask, how many kits have you seen now over the years, if it's possible for you to estimate, like how many kits you've gotten in as a bag and turned out, gave back as a gun? And then how were the G kits compared to all those kits you've seen?
Well, apart from like Russian kits and like Polish kits, those G kits were the cat's meow. They were the best. Like I said, they weren't machine guns. They were all semi-auto, and that the heat cycle of machine gun, really does wear things down kind of quick. Especially like the Romanians and the Yugoslavians, they seem to really, train a lot. Usually when you get those kits, they're usually, especially the stuff that's coming in now, it's usually fairly well used, sometimes hammered to hell. Plus they ran corrosive ammunition, which a lot of times they never cleaned out. So they just ran the gun, put it away wet, and it would, eat away at the gas blocks. And, we just got an actual load beginning of the year of Romanian RPKs, and we're having to actually sleeve the gas blocks because they're so loose. I mean, you could probably put a massive gas port in this thing and it might cycle, but there's so much, the gas piston's not making a seal in the gas block anymore because it's just so rotted away from, all that corrosive ammo going through it, and no one ever really taking care of it, just rotted it out. So, I mean, it's a lot of stuff that's coming in now that probably the people who are just starting now that are getting, we're kind of getting what I would say 10 years ago we would refuse. Like usually when you get kits in, if you deal with a reputable place, they'll listen to you and you'll say, okay, let me get 50 of these kits, 50 of those, 10 of those, and 20 of those. And they'll send them to you and you go through them, you lay them all out, make sure A, you got all the parts, and B, it's rebuildable. You understand, okay, wood's going to probably have dings and dents and stuff like that. You might have light surface rust on things, but the general parts should be serviceable. You should be able to rebuild it back to a gun. And 10 years ago, you'd go through them and you're like, oh man, this one's a little overly beat up. You'd put it back in its bag with all its parts, and when you would have your end of the time list, you'd call the guy you got it from and say, hey, sorry man, I've got 5 kits that are too far bad. Okay, and we'd send it back to them, and they'd send 5 more, and then we'd go. I think all those kits that were refused are now what we're getting, because a lot of the stuff we're getting now, I've definitely seen some pretty heavy life, some heavy usage in life.
Yeah, I always assume that when I know what you're talking about, and I always assume that those kits that went back got parted out and just became parts, like spare parts. But I guess you're right. Like they don't need triggers and stuff. They're not going to keep taking them apart. And at some point, the level changes. Now, again, do you have any idea? Like, do you have any way to measure how many kits you've seen? And since the years you've been doing this, is like so many a year or something, like is it thousands?
I would say we've probably seen. And say the 10 years that I've had my license, I'd say we've probably seen 100 kits, so 2,000 to 3,000 kits.
Okay, and then Is there anything you can say about them? Like, are they mostly one or the other, or is that like just a crazy amount of variety, or is there some consistency?
No, the overwhelming ones are going to be the Romanians. The Romanians, I don't know if they were on high speed wheel build 2-to-1 ratio, but man, they seem to have built more guns than anybody else because they had a ton of varieties of different variations of weird. This is a 12-inch gun. This is a 10-inch gun. This is a 16-inch gun. You're like, well, why do you need so many? And they seem to make a lot of them and a lot of quantity of them. So the majority of the kits that we've seen have been the Romanian, but we've seen kits from all the major ones, Egyptian, Romanian, Polish, Russian, Yugoslavian, North Korean, Chinese. I'm trying to think what else we've seen ones from.
Is there any country that you have not yet seen a parts kit from that you're kind of waiting for a customer to bring in?
There's a lot of those Kyber guns, which we've seen some of them, but you never really know if it's from the same general area or the same general smith, because they will vary. We've seen quite a few ones that are just, you're looking at them, you're like, man, this looks like a AK part, but this is like hand filed made part. You're like, how the heck did somebody make this? And we had one that came in actually an RPD where it had no manufacturer marks anywhere on it. Usually on the top cover of those, that the tilting top cover, they'll have a stamp of whatever country it is, and then the year of production. And there was nothing on it. And then we looked by the safety level, which usually has the safety notifications for whatever country it was. Nothing. And the when we started looking at it, the gun really seemed to be almost like handmade. The trigger was one of the biggest things we took a lot of pictures of, because the trigger looked very handmade and like very crudely done. Like it was the last minute, either a last minute repair or a last minute, I got to get this gun out. And they just kind of like, there was no really finish to it. It functioned just fine, but it wasn't really smoothed out. You could see where they cut it out with a hacksaw. You could see because the saw marks varied from the angle the guy was sawing at. And then like the wood was very, porous, no sealing of any sort, no, finish on it. And the material, like the screws were handmade screws that hold the handguard on. Like the slot where the screwdriver slot was on one of them was like way off to one side, but the gun functioned. The hammers weren't, or sorry, the carrier wasn't beat up. The bolt wasn't beat up. The barrel was fine. I mean, we were able to reuse it, but it looked very much, no country of origin kind of thing.
Crazy. So that's sometimes, there's like Chinese guns you hear about that they made them kind of empty so that they could sell them to whoever kind of thing. But it sounds like more like somebody had some parts and created the parts that were missing.
Yeah, that looked very much like it was a lot of pieces were added to it that were handmade, because like a lot of the work was definitely a guy with a handsaw and a file. Because you can just tell by you see the strokes were different.
Those are kind of tough to get because normally we can't import stuff from countries that are having conflicts and stuff, and these are from places that are having conflicts and stuff. So it's not like there's a route to get these. Like the Romanian stuff was, do you know the route of these things? I know they came from the Guard. That's a story I've heard too. I'm guessing it was something like the Lord of War, where at some point they got put in a big building, and then at some point somebody decided to sell them, and they figured out to sell them to the United States, you got to chop them up. So somebody probably went through and made a little shop somewhere where they chopped them all up and put them into bags, and they got set on containers. And I'm guessing, we waited for a couple of importers.
Well, from what I hear, a lot of the importers are pretty tight-lipped on what happens, because obviously that's where your money's made.
Exactly.
If you go out
They're
there
not telling everybody their secrets, because that's how they do their job.
So one guy told me, he goes, basically what we do is we go out there and we go to these giant warehouses. He goes, you'll be amazed if you're in the middle of town, there's a kind of a little bit rundown warehouse. Here it is. You go in there and it's literally stacked full of, guns and parts and pieces. And you say, okay, well, I want that pallet of guns over there. How much? And they'll shoot you a price, and then you're like, that's a little too much. Let me think about it. And you go over to some other ones, and then you cycle back around to it and go, all right, well, how much did those went in? And then the price, they're very negotiable because they have nothing into it. They don't care. They probably got it somewhere else. And so they're like, oh, well, give me, 5,000 for the whole pallet. All right, cool. I'll take that. And then they usually have another guy who will come and, like you said, chop them up, put them into bags, and then send them on their way. And then put on a boat, and he would then deliver a sea can to this address. They would load all the whatever he bought onto this sea can or in it, and then deliver to the dock. It'd go on a boat and come on over.
Now, I know that part from talking to importers over the years is definitely not as easy. I mean, that part of it might be pretty straightforward, but once it's on the shipping container and coming over, like they got all kinds of problems. They lose containers, they'll get them stuck places. Like that's a bit of a gamble from what it sounds like, and they're not assured that it shows up over here complete.
I've had to get stuff from one of my other businesses actually out of South Africa, and there is times where you were told, oh, it's 4 weeks to get it here. Okay, so you're like, all right, so a month, and then there's no tracking. If it just says, oh, it's on the you get told, yeah, we loaded it on the boat. You're like, okay, and then a month goes by, and you're like, all right, I should be getting a call soon, and another month goes by, and you're like, well, where the hell is it? And then you contact the the guy who sent it, and he goes, oh no, we put it on the boat, and we don't know anything after that. What boat did it go on? And it gets to be a little scary because you've already given all the money, and they could say, oh, sorry, we lost it off the side of a boat. And sometimes you just get delays where a boat, oh, well, we were going to go this way, but we decided to do another pickup on the way, and they had added another 2 months to their trip.
Yeah, seriously. And then they'll go, okay, it's written off. And then a couple months later, sometimes it'll be like, oh, wow, here's our shipment actually came in.
Yeah.
Anyway, so maybe you're in a position then. I've always wondered this from my experience with kits has been from about 2004. I was buying them at J&G like a lot of people. And when I learned how to build, I met a builder at a Phoenix gun show, and I was buying like blemished receivers from him so I could put G kits together. And he's like, oh, come on up and I'll show you how I build, and you can help me build. So I went up there and built for a while to kind of get get some tutelage, right? Some training from him as to what he was doing. Now he did it with an aircraft riveter and with a press and with a mill. So for me, it was useless knowledge because I don't have an aircraft riveter, a mill, or a press when I came home. But it was good to know, and I like to help, and it helped me learn stuff. But my experience with his kits, like, because he'd have a bunch of kits and then the parts, you bend a barrel and now you got all these parts because you don't have the rest of the kit anymore. You have all these extra parts laying around, and I would stay up at night. He'd let me poke through those kits, and I was into the collecting realm, so I was comparing the differences between them. So I always wondered, and again, maybe you can help shed some light on this. As the countries that were cutting these guns up, I know that when they were made, they were probably made during the Cold War or kill us all, right? At least that's what I assume most of them were. But at some point, they all got chopped up. Do you think they all got chopped up like back in the 70s and they've been sitting? Or were they getting chopped up like you kind of mentioned there, kind of moments before they got put into a shipping container? And if it's that way, at some point, did some word get back to them and say, the Americans don't want them if you ruin the rivets? Like, because they would ruin some trigger guards and stuff during the torching. And it's like, I don't want this kit because it's ruined. And I'm wondering if that got back to them. And did you see the kits get treated better so that we got better parts as time went on? Or was it like they were all cut up in the 1960s and we just get what we got?
No, it's definitely changed. I know on the last load of M84 PKMs that came in for the Yugoslavian PKMs, the M84s, those were chopped up, in 2020. So that's how recently they were cut up.
Oh man, I would love to see a video. So you're saying PKMs from Romania?
No, sorry, not sorry, Yugoslavian. Sorry, M84 Yugoslavian ones. When they came in, they were just chopped up not that long ago.
Oh man, I'd like to see a video of that happen. And do you know, did they do anything like that?
I don't think so. I think it's kind of a little bit hush hush because I'm sure there's a little bit of backdoor dealings possibly going on.
Wrong, right? Like somebody's going to get them. I could see them not wanting to promote that.
Yeah. So I mean, those, so I'm sure, stashes are still being found. I know. I think it was towards the end of last year, a bunch of Polish guns were found, and the marks, the manufacturer marks, were machined off of the trunnions. So usually they have a country of origin, puts their country of origin manufacturer mark, which is, a triangle or the circle with the 11 or, whatever they particularly have. And then, a serial number. And all of the ones that were coming in, somebody had gone and ground deep into them to remove the country of origins manufacturer mark off. The serial numbers are all still there, but there's no manufacturer marks. And they were Polish kits, but all of those ones were done that way, and they were all spray painted. Afterwards, after they were done, somebody went over there and just give it a quick with spray paint to knock to hide basically that those numbers have been the country of origin has been ground off of them. So I mean, those were probably, I heard those ones were supposedly a group of guns that were sent somewhere, and when they got there, they weren't allowed to be there, so they were dismarked and then sold over to us. So stuff I think still going on.
That part would be, like a whole nother investigative journalist type of thing or investigation or whatever it would be. But that would be interesting to kind of discover that. But that's interesting. And that would be annoying because from what I understand, when they really finish an AK, it's parkerized or blued, but some kind of dipping, process, and then usually painted, right, with a good paint.
Yeah.
So if you were to scrape off all that, you're effectively ruining what's a decent covering on that metal, and just squirted it with spray paint. You'd be really hindering a part of that gun's a characteristic of that gun that people look for. Not to mention the country of origin is usually pretty cool. So we're talking on the trunnion, like just below the rear sight on the left side, opposite the charging handle, there's usually, like you say, that country factory symbol, and then the dates and stuff. Do you take a lot of pictures for Instagram? Just wondering, do you do any kind of archiving of pictures? And like, I'm a collector, so I always would think of like, I'm going to take a picture of every factory stamp. But again, you've seen so many parts kits. Have you seen like every factory stamp at this point?
I think so. You never know. I mean, there's so many little, niche ones that, there's certain factories. They only made that I've only seen 2 North Korean guns ever. And so I'm sure there's more than just those 2. They were actually out of the same country or the same factory. So I'm sure there's other variations to those. So, and the Egyptian ones, I know there's a couple different variations to those. So, there's definitely, stuff that I haven't seen. But yeah, we always take pictures of unusual, markings or strange things where you're like, wow, what the heck was going on here? I mean, that's a little unusual of a mark or a note, of something that's just different from the norm of what you see. Just because exactly like that is, sometimes somebody will ask you and you're like, well, I think I've seen something like that. And you go through your pictures and, oh, here it is. Yeah, I saw that. And we got that on a kit way back in 2012. Or 2016, we saw a kit just like that with that mark on there.
Now, for me, bayonet guy, I came into this whole thing as a bayonet. Well, I started out as an AK collector, but I figured out really fast that I ended up hanging out with people that I would have like an entire wall, a slat wall full of different AKs and like Romanian, a Bulgarian, a Chinese, and all this. And I'm like, this is awesome, but I'm never going to be able to obtain this. This is a lot of money and investment. It takes like multiple safes to keep them all. And it was a fun thing to experience, but at the same time, I understood why you'd want to do it, because AKs are like golf clubs or skateboards or something. Yeah, they're both skateboards, but 3 or 4 different skateboards have different character to them and different aesthetic or whatever. So what I liked about the bayonets is, I think the same thing with the web gear, sometimes with the uniforms and stuff, you can get a lot of the kind of vibe from the AK in the bayonet. So I was all about that variability, or like the variety, right? And at the time, back in the early 2000s, a bunch of it was like the internet was growing and a bunch of people were jumping online, and we were discovering that we all had this interest in the Kalashnikov, but we didn't know nothing about it. So we started to research and ask each other. So I was going to get into that aspect of it. And I know that you interact now with the Instagram, which is kind of a better forum. I mean, the forums are okay, but I was going to ask, as far as like that element of the Kalashnikov, which is the collaboration and the getting together with other people who have a similar interest in sharing, so that we can discover and learn. And to some extent, like I say, some of the forums would archive. Instagram becomes an archive, so that when we have a question, we know where to go. We have shared places that we can go look up the answer. How big of that element is the AK to you compared to like, the German guns or the M16s or ARs and stuff? Like, other guns have followings, but How big is that of a portion? Is that, I guess, that
You see it a
element?
lot. There are some hardcore people they could tell you stuff of every little niche and thing about every unique gun there is. And of course, everyone has their favorite fan gun. Okay, there's the guys who love Chinese guns. There's a gentleman I know who um, lives up in Alaska, and he's all about Chinese guns. And he could tell you amazing stuff about this and that of this Chinese gun. And well, that was from here. And oh no, if you look right here, see this little mark, that's definitely from this factory. And he's just hardcore into those. And there's guys who are into the each country of origin, and those are great guys to know, because there's times where you look at it and you're like, well, is that normal? I mean, that doesn't look normal to be like that. And you could send them over a picture, and oh no, okay, yeah, that's perfectly normal, or oh, I've never seen that before. And it's great because most of us builders, we all get along, we all know each other, and we'll sometimes shoot back and forth. Hey, have you ever seen this before? This is something weird. And oh wow, yeah, I've seen one of those before. That was in a blah blah blah. And there's some of these guys who have been around longer than I have. They're great because they've done it longer. They were there when you could get the kits, when they were you could get a full gun. You didn't have to import a parts kit. You could get the whole damn gun then. There's a guy named Troy Sellers, and he's been around, I mean, forever, and he knows a lot of stuff because he's seen the early times, and he's great to ask a question if you got a question. He's seen it probably, so it's great to have those people.
Troy from In Range.
Yep. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and those are the guys, like you say, that, and they kind of were playing with the Mahdi's that they used for Red Dawn. They were playing, like you say, with rifles when nobody else was even considering them. And then when they had the assault weapons ban and kind of the hard times and the internet came around, they were the ones that created all the references that I remember seeing at the beginning.
Exactly. That's where we need those kind of guys, because they've seen it, and they can give you a original database to work with.
And like you say, they shared so much that became, for me, actually inspirational for what I even do, like share in the community, because I found so much nuance and like depth to the Kalashnikov collecting. And, as being in the military back in the 90s and 80s, I guess 80s, I'm old. I guess it is the 80s, I'm pretty old. Being in the military back during the Cold War, though, just the concept that these things were chopped up, brought over here, and we're shooting them recreationally into the dirt with their ammo was awesome. And for, like you say, like, very, very inexpensively for a long time. It wasn't until recently that it was really expensive to shoot these things. So I appreciate you letting me kind of bounce around with some of these, as you kind of started off with a description of M13 and you're kind of getting into the building, but really only got into your beginning of building. You've done a lot of building, and there's been some questions coming in. So I do want to say thanks to the people that are watching this live. I'm going to ask a couple of the questions that came in earlier, and they might be a little bit of cover what we already talked about, but just to cover them. Woods from up in Washington asked, why the AK?
I like the fact that it was just so robust. Like I said, I was in the Army, and we were told, we were sitting there with Q-tips cleaning our guns and making absolutely every little spot was clean, because don't let it get dirty or it'll jam up. And I watched people who, knock the gun over in the dirt, and, there's dirt falling out of it. They're still shooting away, just happy as hell. No problems. And I just liked how robust it was. And plus, at the time, 7.62 was, very popular round, and it held a hell of a whack of a round. I mean, it's a big bullet. And it was, it is a very purpose-built gun. It is designed. It's not a sniper rifle. You get the people, I want to, 2 MOA. Well, that's not going to do that, man. You can get every once in a while ones that do it, but it's designed to hit a man-sized target and to decimate it. So I just liked that, how robust and how simplistic. And when you look at it, it's really everything is done for an exact reason, and that's the only reason it's done that way. It is purely to make it work and to be simple and easy for anyone to pick up, fully functioning. You could take it apart. I mean, you could pretty much show anyone in about 5 minutes how to take the gun apart, and it's very simple. They're going to be able to put it back together, shoot it, and be very effective and dangerous with it. It doesn't take a very very knowledgeable person how to use a gun to figure it out very quickly to how to use the thing. And you got to remember, it's a whole different concept of how they thought over there. We come from the American thought of, don't ever move your hand off the pistol grip, and everything's got to match, so we have total compatibility. They weren't about that. You know what? If it doesn't work, we'll just make another one. Labor's cheap. Over there, you have people who are, basically almost indentured servants, punching out these guns at an alarming rate, and they would just crank them out, and so it's not a perfect gun. Who cares? You're giving it to somebody who, unfortunately, may not make it very long, so they didn't really care.
I think a lot of it was they had those parades and stuff, and it was like, let's get a gun that you can see versus the uniforms. Like, it stood out. It was iconic in shape, and that all worked. It was a functional gun. Like I say, it actually worked. But then it was like the teeth. Like, they didn't have to bite if they had the teeth. So let's make a bunch of them and to make parades full of people carrying them, and everybody in our country is going to mind their P's and Q's, and other countries might leave us alone. I think that was a part of it. It's okay, so appreciate that. And then this one, you've kind of mentioned that you're really interested in the AK, but there must be others. So Woods asked, what is your favorite non-AK type or action?
Well, directly close to it would be a Galil, because they're basically an AK. I mean, they look very similar. They act very similar. Yeah, they're not an AK. I know. Somebody's gonna say they're not an AK. I know they're not an AK, but they're very similar in design. That's where they got the idea from, was that and a Valmet. I mean, you look at the two guns. Well, gee, there's a Galil. Put an AK and a Valmet. Put them underneath the covers, and 9 months later, you got an AK, a Galil. So I would say, the Galil, because it's the same thing. It was made, by a country where it was surrounded by everyone who hated it. So they need to produce a gun that's going to be very effective and, fairly inexpensive to manufacture. And we can manufacture a lot of them. Then after that, if you got into bigger ones, would probably be, it's going to be the PPSH 41, because when you look at those guns, and so you get those early 40s and mid 40s ones, the machine work that goes into them. Now you got to remember, this machine work is by a man running a manual machine. No DROs, no digital, none of this easy stuff. This guy's got a ruler probably, and he's doing it on a manual machine. And they're making these things. They're cranking them out by the thousands probably a day in the middle of a goddamn war, and they're producing them, and they worked. And they still work, and we're still building on them. They're 80, 90, 100 years old pretty soon. We're still going to be building on those damn things, because they're in that technology of a man on a machine making that is just, to me, it's like, it's awesome, because here it was, these parts are being made by a man who didn't have a DRO, and they worked. Everyone looks the same. You measure them, you get slight differences, but you could pretty much, all those parts are fit the same. They look the same. So I'd say that would be those two would be the closest ones, non-AK, that I would say I liked.
Okay, I'm mixing them up. PPSH is the 9mm subgun, not the 50.
No. The PPSH was actually the World War II. It is the one you all see. They call the Papa Shah. It's shot 7.62 by 25.
Oh, okay.
It has an insane cycle rate. I mean, I'm not exactly sure what it is, but it's well in the 900 rounds a minute. It shoots insanely fast. And
looks like one carbine in front and looks more like a Sten or something up front. Now I remember.
Yeah, exactly. And they were, very purpose-built guns, and they were to be built cheap and fast. They were, kind of a copy of a Somi. There's some very similar things with them, but it was, same thing. It was built in the middle of a war with the Germans pounding their doors, and they were cranking these things out, and they made a lot of them.
Right on. That's one that I have not shot. I've fiddled with one time, but I didn't feel like shooting it. I didn't shoot it, so I probably should have. But I do know that they shoot fast, but I didn't know that. And that's interesting for me, and hopefully for others, because having somebody go, oh, that gun's interesting is one thing, but getting that insight of somebody who's familiar with machining and looking at what's that called? Like the backwards engineering, like that. You said, this wasn't put into some kind of template where they just whittled it out like a router. This meant somebody was in them. And the thing is, I'm thinking as you're describing that these are massive machines, that the Soviet Union was just like, we're building machines that will never need to be replaced. Like, they must have put tons of metal into that mill so that guy could do that all day. And then his job was to make sure that he did the same thing every single
Yep.
time, right? Crazy.
Over and over and over again.
I just want to bounce around a little bit. Cash EDC asked a question. He's from Ohio and does a bunch of builds he posts a bunch of pictures and has a bunch of AKs in his collection. He asked, used Romanian, I could put this on the screen, used Romanian AIM-74 parts kit in the past, used a Romanian AIMS 74 parts kit in the past for an AK pistol build, I believe. Any more rare AK variants coming? Oh, I guess he's saying you've used a Romanian AIM-74 for a kit?
Yeah, we built actually a load of guns. We used AIM-74 parts kits to build a bunch of pistols for Atlantic Firearms. And so what he's probably seen if anything like that's coming down the pipeline. So unfortunately, what I hear is no. A lot of those ones, those kind of ones like that, you'll get they'll come in spotty, but the huge loads where you see them for sale everywhere and they're cheap, I don't hear of any of those coming in. There's going to be more of the Romanian regular M63s and 65s. Those will keep coming in, and there's supposedly another stash of RPKs that have been found. But unfortunately, I mean, they're starting to dry up. They're just not quite as plentiful out there. The Polish, we haven't seen a lot of Polish kits in, apart from the new generation stuff that's come out in that long. I mean, I haven't seen Polish ones since those remarked guns that came in last year. I haven't seen any Tantals or any of those ones in kind of a while. And so I think, unfortunately, I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of that stuff, mass coming in anymore. I think there's just going to trickle in of people, oh, I found this here, or I've had this sit on a shelf. So it's one of those things, if you see it, you want it, you better buy it, because it may not be there later.
Well, I like to hear that, because I'm selling some parts kits. But that's one of the things that I'd found when I was collecting. I was collecting my kits in the 2000s, before 2010, pretty much. And what would happen is something be rare as hen's teeth, and then somebody'd open up a warehouse or a shipping container, got here, and then it was all over the place, and you could get them. And not every, but it was like that. And there was no way to know if your rare thing would stay rare, in other words, or if a thing that was common would stay common. But I mean, that was what, 10, 12 years ago now. So it's crazy. But I think that one of the things we've got working against us is these things were built during the Cold War, and period. Like, they weren't continued to be built. So some of the stuff we're getting is a finite resource. Like, there was a lot of them, but there's not now. And some of these got used for actual use, and are never going to get over here.
Nope. And it's like those AIMS kits, like he says, those AIM kits, they were everywhere about 5 years ago. I mean, you could call anyone you want and get tons of them. Now, good luck. You can't even. I mean, the front sight and muzzle brake on those are unique to those guns, and I've heard those things going for over $300 for the front sight and like $180 for the damn muzzle brake. When you used to be able to buy the whole kit for that.
And is that because somebody is down to having one part left?
Well, there's a lot of SARs. There was a version that was brought in was called SAR, and they were basically AIMS guns, but they were the threads were chopped off them, so they weren't scary threaded barreled guns. So a lot of guys who are trying to get their SAR back to being an AIMS gun, they need the front sight and muzzle brake, because they're unique to only those guns. And you just can't find them. There's none of them around.
How often, and again, this is the kind of things that we used to see in the past. So you're talking about the SAR, like the old Romanian SARs, like the SAR 1, 2, and 3. So somebody had an old gun after the assault weapons ban started. People started bringing in guns that didn't need pistol grips skeleton stocks and that kind of garbage. So they were rushing to bring anything in, and there was no more skinny mags needed. So they could bring, well, actually, they still did have to bring them in skinny mags. But anyway, there was this time when guns were coming in kind of neutered. So you're talking about people that own guns that have sentimental reason, or probably sentimental stuff. So they'd want to get that gun going. What I would notice back in the day, and I would assume happened more in the years that I kind of not been paying as much attention, is something like that, a muzzle brake or a muzzle device for an old gun that people are scraping parts kits around to get that part. Isn't that the kind of thing that people are going to see that as an opportunity nowadays, a machinist, and go, oh, give me the dimensions, let's start making those? I know a couple of companies. Is that the kind of way that some of these got started, or was it?
Oh yeah,
Like
it's the whole thing. It's supply and demand. If there's enough people demanding it, somebody's going to supply it.
Right,
I mean,
and instead of having to get
it's going to pop up.
rare one, you get the $85 made in the USA one. You support a US company, and you got it. You don't have to worry about shooting it. You're not ruining a collector's item or something.
Exactly. I mean, yeah. I mean, if there's enough call for it, somebody will go, okay, I'm going to make these, but they're, it's the whole thing. It's just they're just not going to be quite as inexpensive as they used to be, where you pick them up, heck of cheap, and there's a whole bunch of them in a box, and somebody asks you $20 for each piece, but they'll be quite a bit more, and then you get the guys who want it as original as possible. I want it. No, I want an original, front sight and an original muzzle brake. So they'll look at the US one and go, yeah, cool, but I want an original one. So
now you've met a lot of people probably from either building or just being around and experience and stuff. Are there more people that build an AK out of a kit that put it on the wall like I would do just to look at it and hang a bayonet on it? Or are there more people that put it together from a kit because they want a gun they can get out and shoot, like at Red October or something like that?
I'm going to say there's more shooters definitely now. There are other guys who are collectors. We've got several guys who they'll find these obscure parts kits. Hey, I found this one, and I want you to put it together, but I could pretty much tell we're probably the only ones that's ever going to shoot the gun. We'll test fire before we send it out, and you're like, hey, how'd you like? Oh, I haven't taken it out shooting yet. And then they'll send another kit, and you get to chatting them on the phone. So did you ever shoot that other kit I sent you last year? Oh yeah, not yet. I haven't built that. I haven't shot that gun yet. You're like, dude, that's pretty badass gun, and East German gun. Oh no, I haven't shot it yet. Why not? I mean, I can't stand not having having a gun I haven't shot. It drives me nuts. But they're but the majority of the guys are definitely shooters. We'll do a lot of custom gunsmithing to guns where they already have the gun and they want, okay, now I want some trick stuff done to it. I want things to make it more my gun, to fit me, to work best with me, instead of kind of, it's, yes, I understand the AK platform, but I want it to fit more my needs and then just generic needs.
Right, because one of the things about the AK was that it was made for conscripts, like say, so it was simple to use and not a lot of parts, and they didn't really care if it was ergonomic at all or if it was comfortable. So people that shoot it for sport or for whatever they want it, they want it more ergonomic, and there's a million things that over the time people have developed to do that, parts and modifications and stuff. So in other words, it sounds like back in the early 2000s, it was almost, I mean, the whole net my rifle is fine thing came from back in that early 2000s time, when I think most of us building guns were veterans trying to replace the guns that were built to kill us because we could, and it was $85 to buy a kit, so it was not that expensive to do it. But now they get people shooting them all the time. That idea of like putting an AR stock on it, for a while there, you might as well say I don't really like AKs if you were putting an AR stock on it. Now there's like a million different ways to put different stocks and grips and stuff on it. But so nowadays it's not even a thing for people to modularize it or to accessorize it up into some, I don't know what to call them now, just hybrid AKs or AK platforms.
Yeah, I always call it the customized to you AK. Just because you get these people who are, we get hate mail every once in a while when we'll do modify a gun, and we'll get somebody comments, why would you do that? Why would you cut up that particular gun? Well, it's their gun, so let them do what they want. Make it their gun. I got plenty of guns that are, cut up to be what I want them to be. This is how I want it. I want that AR stock. I want that, big, massive handguard on there. I want, the crazy mag pull grip or, US palm grip on there. I don't care that it's not an original whatever anymore. It's my gun. It's more to fit my needs.
And now, just to kind of switch gears, and I didn't actually ask how long we can chat tonight. We're coming up on the hour. I don't want to keep you all night, but let me know if we're from pushing my my limits here. But Woods had asked again from before, catching up to questions from when we first chatted. How many rounds until the barrel is toast, and does it vary with the different AK types? So one of the things, like I mentioned, as I kind of let people know we were going to be chatting, is that you are not just a gunsmith, but you're a gunsmith in Vegas. And something we haven't even really touched on yet is that Las Vegas, since, well, I went up there in 2014, but I know it started back in the olden days, but in 2014, it really caught on. At least that's when it got on my radar, that there was a lot of recreational or like what's it called, like machine gun tourism that were
Yeah.
really
Shoot a machine gun. How many times
marketing
do you go
their
down to Las Vegas Strip and see the sign, shoot a machine gun in Vegas?
exactly. And I got up there, and I used to go to SHOT Show about a week early and check out the gun shops and the ranges and stuff. And I've loved how Clark County range has just gone insane. It's one of the best ranges in the country. You know, Clark County is really developed with SHOT Show and everything. So I used to, because I'm down here in Tucson, I can go up and hang out in Vegas for, you know, kind of watch the SHOT Show start up. So one of those years in 2014, I think I went up and checked out all the machine gun places, hung out with like Machine Gun BB. I think that's when we first chatted. And you brought me, I mean, I was up there literally looking at the machine gun places. And I'm not an idiot. I've been around the place for a while, but I'm looking at machine gun places, and it never even registered until later on when we talked that those machine gun places almost daily are shooting more rounds than like a regular AK is going to see ever, like in service period, and then maybe even training AKs like daily. And I never even thought about that, but there's parts on a gun that wear out. Like guns are just machines, and ideally they're designed to last for a while. But you know, like an AR or an AR-15 M16 is very modular. You can unscrew most of it or take a pin out and replace just about any part. So salvage 90% of it if you need to. An AK isn't like that. How much, I guess what Wood's question is what's the most likely part to break? I'm going to ask that question, but then I guess I'm going to ask right away after that, like, are you noticing now as you're maintaining these AKs that is Vegas putting more use to an AK than it's designed for, or is an AK able to deal with what Vegas has given it?
So from my experience of dealing with the ranges, they will on a what they call a busy weekend, which is usually a 3-day weekend, on a major holiday weekend, they'll put 20,000 rounds through a gun with and not bat an eye. They're burning up 20,000 rounds to put through one particular weapons platform. Now, a lot of these bigger ranges will have several AKs that they're running, or several of different guns, and they try to move them around. But they, even still, if they had 5 AKs and they're putting 20,000 rounds, that's a lot of rounds through a gun in a short amount of time. The other thing is they're always full auto. You know, who wants to shoot the gun semi-auto? You don't come to Vegas to shoot a machine gun to shoot it semi-auto. No, you're going to just go 1, 2, 3. Okay, the guy's going to go, okay, flip it to full auto and go. Brrr, you empty the mag. Hey, you want to do it again? Hell yeah. Throw another mag in there. Brrr, okay, you're 45 rounds in this. Hey, your buddy want to shoot this? Yeah, sure. He goes over, he dumps a mag. Now the gun's getting hot, and they'll get a lot of rounds through them, and they'll get through them fast. We have seen every part on an AK break. There's no part that we've not seen break on an AK yet. I mean, front sights fall off from being just shot so much they cracked and fell off. The typical bolt carrier trunnion, exploding in a million pieces. Pistol grips breaking, carriers snapping in half. Gas pistons breaking. All the wood furniture falling off the guns, triggers breaking, sears falling apart. Every part of the gun, including the receivers, has fallen apart on these guns. I truly think, yes, in Vegas, they'd run them to death. Round count, it really varies. It matters on how busy the place is and how they're taking care of their guns to begin with. Do they run them really wet, or do they run the gun dry? Wet or dry by how much lubricant they run on the gun. If they run them
wet, I'm assuming you run it wet. The gun likes it, but probably the guests are like, I got grease on me or whatever.
Yeah, so exactly. That's what usually happens is they'll try to run it wet enough to make it work, but not so bad it sprays the people, because a lot of people are coming. They're doing the whole gamut. I'm going to do this. They're going to go out to dinner afterwards, and they don't want to be covered in spray and grime off of a gun. They get all pissed, so they try to run them as dry as they can, but wet that they'll function. And so, unfortunately, that ruins parts as well. But I mean, they will, they'll take they'll buy a Wasser at the time, convert to full auto, run it for 3 months, and then the gun is junk. There's literally no saving it. The receivers bulged out, the fire control groups are beat up, the trunnions cracked, or the bolts broken, and we just basically we would get those in, and they're like, hey, can you fix it? Nope, it's junk. All right, take what you can off it. We strip all whatever parts we can off it, put it in their bin, because a lot of these places, they bring in so much stuff. They literally have bins in our shop of of stuff we've taken off the guns that we can reuse. Okay, this is, blah, 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 gun range. These are all of their parts that we could save off of their guns. And then we'll hand back the, what's left of the receiver back to them so they can, take it off their books. And we would just save whatever we can for another gun they bring in. Hey, I broke the pistol grip off. Hey, no problem. Got pistol grips. Hey, I broke, the handguard off. Yeah, no problem. We got that. Front sight. Yeah, no problem. We got that. We broke a carrier. Yeah, no problem. We got one of those from your, one of those other guns. So they will definitely see them. I would say for those guys, they were usually happy if they got one to live about 4 months. And that's from creation to death. It was 4 months.
Awesome.
It's pretty much they've made their money. They bought the thing for, $600-700, and they'll basically shoot it till it dies. And, the usual things will die on them, recoil springs, disconnector springs, extractor springs, hammer springs, not as much. They usually didn't die. Every once in a while, they'll break a firing pin. But usually when they start having major failures, they'd bring it to us and they're like, hey, this thing, it's, it won't go into battery. And we've seen them so many rounds through them that the gun won't go into battery because there's so much carbon in the gas block that it can't seat. The bullet, so the gas piston cannot go into the gas block because there's so much goddamn carbon in there. And it's just, I was from one weekend.
And this is just the Kalashnikov platform. Obviously, they're doing packages, so people are going in there and shooting the Kalashnikov that much. That means they're shooting a 1911 that much, and they're shooting everything else that much.
Oh yeah, ARs and friggin'. I mean, we also deal a lot with other platforms. So we've had, Uzis Uzis are very popular also, and they'll shoot them so much the backs are cracked. They crack right where the trigger group locks in. There's a little hump there. They'll come up the sides of those. The cracks will run right up the side of those. They're being such a heavy block, big bolt in there. It's a fairly reliant gun, but it'll just rattle the receivers apart. Crack them to pieces. Or they just beat up sears and all sorts of crazy stuff.
It'd be interesting. I mean, they probably would not want to hear about this, but to have the designers go to Vegas and just see what's happening to their guns, because there's no way. I mean, of all the things they design these things to withstand and endure, they never thought about just wailing on it, shooting it constantly. They'd have to have designed it with nothing but buffers, right?
Yeah.
I didn't even think they save it. Do you think that there's a way to create something that would it just look like some kind of weird pipe with a bunch of buffers in it to make like a gun that could live in Vegas? Would it just look like a fire hose or something?
I don't think anything ever will. I mean, it's a mechanical item. It's going to break.
Yeah.
You're going to find the weak link somewhere. I mean, that's what, you get all these people that, AKs never break. Yeah. Well, you never seen machine guns. I mean, like I'll tell everyone, a machine gun will eventually break. I don't care who made it, who built it, what it is. If it's shot as a machine gun, it'll eventually break something. That's what they do. They break. And, these people go to these like machine gun shoots and they'll be like, well, what happened? Oh, the gun broke. Well, you don't seem worried about it. No, they break all the time, man. Machine guns break. That's what they do. You bring some parts with you that you could easily fix, the usual firing pin and springs and little stuff like that. And if it's more than that, hey, this gun's offline. Sorry, man.
That makes
one of our favorite ones we built actually for the very first Red October, we built a M92 into a little SBR machine gun with a triangle folder. And that was one of the ones we had the best data on because we built it purposely to be brought and taken to events so we can kind of keep a round count on it. So the original barrel, now it's a typical machine gun, so it's very rarely shot semi-auto. It's pretty much mag dump, and it lost its original barrel, the one that it came with, at about 30,000 rounds. It started to do a pretty bad key holding situation. So we actually replaced it with a US barrel, put that in there, and that one made it right around about 60, I think, if I remember correctly, right at 60. And then it started having, major key holding problems. Replaced the barrel again, and it made it up till last year's Red October. Yeah, it was last year's Red October, and we lost a trunnion on it. It finally cracked its trunnion. And so the gun went, it started shooting kind of weird. I was like, let's pull this one until let me throw some eyes on it. Let's pull it. It's acting weird. I don't want to have any problems. And pulled it in. The trunnion had developed a crack in it. It's like, oh, we're done. It's done. It didn't break it, but it's got a big old crack in it and started to fold the locking lugs back.
Crazy.
So I mean, the receiver made it. The barrel, it was on. Sorry, its third barrel, original fire control group, original recoil spring. Did have another extractor spring in there, and did have another disconnector spring. But I mean, all in all, it's not bad. I mean, that it made it from the very first Red October to last year's. So I would actually was very happy with its life cycle. It lived longer than I thought it would.
What does this the 6th Red October?
2021's Red October. It was built for the very first one, which I think was.
Oh, but I'm saying this year's the 6th one.
No, this is. So there was what, 3? There's 3 in Utah. Wait, 1.
I think so.
2, 3. Yeah, 3. You might be right. I think you're right. I think this is the 6th one because we missed 2020s.
Yeah,
so it made it a year, then jumped a year. So I think this is the 6th one. So it made it.
That's awesome.
So it made it 5. Plus, we had other events we took to Kalash Bash. It's been to those ones. Every Kalash Bash. It's been also other things where we do events for people who want to try out. Hey, we want a Commblock weapons class. Okay, this is the usual ones you're going to run into. This is it's a good a copy of a quote unquote crank, the AKS 74U. It's a 7.62 kind of version of it. Looks kind of the same, and it shoots easy. And we did a bunch of testing for a guy who's making mags. It was 7.62, so we could just mag dump. So it got a lot of use out of it. And I'm everyone's like, oh man, aren't you bummed out? No, I'm actually happy. I mean, it made it a lot farther than I thought it would.
Do you think you go for people that aren't familiar? Did this one have the bulge trunnion?
Nope, this is a flat side.
But this still had the thicker receiver, correct?
Nope, 1 millimeter.
Oh, okay. So I was going to say, did Yugos have a thicker receiver? But okay, then that was pretty
no. This was an early flat side one, so it would be the regular 1 millimeter receiver. When the bulge ones have the thicker receivers in them, those have the 1.5 millimeter receivers. But this was a smooth side or the flat side receiver. So
is there any real difference between the 1 and the 1.5 from what you've seen, like dealing with Vegas and stuff? Do Chinese and some of the thicker ones last any longer with that?
The only thing, I mean, yes, no. Only thing that really benefits them on is the fire control holes, ovaling out, which that you only really saw those on some of the crappier washers, when those junky washers came in and everything was super soft. Some of the early M92s, when they first started coming in, the receivers were super soft, and the holes would egg out fairly quickly. So the 1.5 definitely helped.
Production guns did that. I thought that only the U.S. made receivers that we built on ovaled. I didn't realize that there was production guns that were ovaling also.
Oh yeah, they would.
Okay. And that's probably like, hey, let's get these out because the Americans want them as fast as possible, and most Americans put them in a safe and never shoot the thing anyway. So just get it made.
Yeah. As again, it's the fact it got converted into a machine gun. It's the round counts what kills things, and it's fast. I mean, it's mag after mag after mag. The guns don't really get to cool down. I mean, we've had at events we've had to pull guns off the thing because no one could hold onto the gun anymore because it's so goddamn hot. Through gloves, you can't hold onto the gun.
Oh yeah, back in the day, one of the viral videos was an AK shooting until the wood caught fire because it'll keep shooting.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they'll keep running until they literally lock themselves up because they're so hot. And then, I mean, I don't trust doing that kind of crazy stuff where you just shoot them until they blow up because I'm always worried about when it blows up. I don't want it blowing up in my face. But we've shot them so much that they've gotten hot that with gloves on you cannot hold on to the gun. And you're holding on to it, and you're
only doing that to kind of play and have like stunt, right? That's not good for it, and you wouldn't.
No, it's actually very bad for it. Your heat treated parts, and when you start getting those heavy heat cycles, you're jacking with a heat treat, and then then people are like, well, it broke. Well, yeah, you just treated the parts, man. You took them from a good heat treat of 60, and you just brought it down to 4 when it gets that hot. And what do you expect? You can't live forever.
Is there any way to, in the field, do anything about that? Or is it literally you'd have to take it all apart and reheat treat everything? Or is that even not possible?
In the field, you wouldn't. You just, unfortunately, if it was combat, you just throw the gun away, grab somebody else's, and go. And then also in the field, you're not, everyone, it's not, you wouldn't just be mag dumping nonstop because you can't, everyone thinks, oh, it's, it's really cool to dump a mag. But really the gun is
Real life, you
completely.
shoot one mag and
It's
the
just,
gun don't care. It's when you shoot mag
yeah.
after mag after mag that it starts
And
to
also,
care.
your firing is is all over the place at that point. If you're trying to actually get into keeping people's heads down, yeah, okay, a machine gun's great for that. But if you're you out in the world trying to kill zombies, you're probably gonna want the gun in semi-auto mode, and you'd save ammo and be way more effective with it.
It's true, and it's never going to heat up like that. Now you
Yeah,
mentioned
exactly.
that the U.S. barrel lasted something like 60,000 rounds compared to the 30,000 from the original. Is that
Mhm.
normal proportions? Do U.S. barrels have better treat or something, or better?
No, unfortunately those were the era of the kind of the crappier when the kits were coming in from. Oh man,
Okay, that was a subpar Yugo
yeah, it
barrel.
was a subpart. We knew it when we got it because you could tell because it was when we pressed the barrel out, it was really soft. They were like, this thing's
Okay,
not gonna last.
okay,
Usually, regular Commblock, cold hammer forged barrels, those things last. They're good quality barrels. I mean, hammer forging a barrel is you take a big thing, you make it small by pounding it really hard. You just get all its molecules nice and tight together. It's gonna just wear so much better. It's just that one happened to be, the U.S. barrels, we nitrided a barrel, which definitely helps. And it was a, good barrel. And, there's obviously, if you get an original Yugo barrel that was a hammer forged barrel, it should live longer than that because it just hammer forging makes it just so much stronger.
okay. And then, any idea what we're talking lifespan if you're not full auto dumping out of it all the time?
Full auto person, I mean, you should easily get out of a barrel, I would say 70,000 rounds without, if you're shooting, having fun, you should be able to get about 70,000 rounds out of it before you start to really lose a barrel.
That's awesome.
If it's a good quality barrel, if you get some of these ones that are like, cheaper ones, yeah, you're going to be more in the, 30 to, 50,000 rounds, because they're just not the quality. There's a lot of, for a while there, I mean, you probably remember in the early 2000s, we had all those white barrels out there in the
Yeah.
white. And oh God, those things, dude, if you got 20,000, then you'd be amazed. They were, I don't know what they were made out of, ground up, piece of aluminum foil or something, but they were terrible. They didn't last at all. They start keyholing within, I would say 20,000 rounds. You start getting
And
keyhole issues out of them.
that was more of a factor of, again, I think we were putting together guns to put on the wall and look at and have the furniture. Like we were interested in having variety back then. We didn't think about performance, I don't think, and
Yeah.
I imagine they were building things just to hold take the place, but not necessarily to fulfill the job.
Yeah, not to live long.
That people weren't satisfied with that at all and demanded better barrels.
Yep.
One question from Woods again is, well, I missed it. What country built the AK, or what country built the best AKs in your opinion traditionally? And is there one that stands up better than others, or are they all the same?
I mean, I would say the if you went to case say Russians were quote unquote the best. The next I would say is actually the Polish. Those guns usually their fit and finish is very nice. Parts you could kind of when you would get in like a a Tantal or one of their underfolders or something like that, you can see that somebody took the time after the part was done and did a little fine tuning. So it was like when they were building them, I don't know if they were allowed to, but I think the gunsmiths there were able to kind of fine tune parts because you'll see like tiny little file marks where the next one won't have those file marks, and you're like, oh, so almost looks like their gunsmiths were allowed to try to fine tune them a little bit better to make them better than they were, and you'll take the time to be a little more precise of a gun. So I would say definitely the Polish were next. After that, Chinese guns are pretty nice. They're a little screwball. Their barrels are soft. The barrels bend actually really easy, so you got to be careful if you push them in and out. You can bend a barrel fairly easy, but you can. What's amazing is you can actually bend them straight again. I had one of my guns that I was doing a front end conversion on, and I bent the barrel, and I was like, well, that won't hurt me to try to see if I can straighten it. And it straightened right out with with very little force, and it surprised me how easy it straightened itself back out.
Again, it has something to do probably with the metal and the way they're made or something.
Yeah, I mean, metal has a memory. It knows where it was. You just have to let it get back there. So I mean, I just basically put it in a press, press down, turned it, press down, turned it, kept spinning it as I got it. So I put it with dialicator on it. Okay, it went back, run an alignment rod through it. No, whenever I'd find a catch, press a little more slightly until it would slide all the way through with no problem, and it shot. Never had a problem since.
Dang,
So,
I did. I've watched a friend of mine bent like 3 barrels trying to put a kit together. We give him shit to this day because he ruined 3 barrels putting this one kit together. But I bent a barrel one time, and I didn't even know that was a thing to try to bend it back. I probably would have sat there all evening or all night trying to bend it back if I would have known that it was even a thing.
Yeah,
back in those days, you go, oh, okay, and you kept the rest of the parts because, like you say, then you'd use the parts for something else. And you just threw the barrel away. It was like a $10 part or something back in the day.
Yeah.
Where do you put Bulgarians and Yugos? I know that a lot of times the Bulgarians get a lot of love, but I'm always speculated. Now they're in Vegas, so I can understand if you've got a a different relationship with them because you're there with them. But I know that they paid a lot of money for a Bulgarian. So very few people are going to say a Bulgarian's low on the list when they paid almost $2,000 for it back in the day. But people usually gave Bulgarians a really good rep, and then the Yugos always get a good rep for both build and like just being a rugged gun. Do you agree, or is that something they got different opinions on those?
Bulgarians, I think, was just because they had not the arsenal stuff that was brought in, but like the parts kits, because they all seem to be really low round counts. Usually, you don't find a Bulgarian kit that's beat to hell. I mean,
Okay.
I don't think I've ever. I'm trying to think of real quick, but I don't think I ever remember seeing a Bulgarian kit that was beat to death. I mean, it's usually, there might be surface rust and stuff like that, but I don't remember ever seeing that have just been, shot to death. Like sometimes, like a lot of Romanian ones, you do find them being shot to death. And the Yugo guns, why they're, kind of so heavy duty, is they were overbuilt to begin with. Those things are damn tanks. I mean, they had the thicker receiver, bigger trunnions. Everything was kind of overbuilt on those guns, which is good. I mean, it's great, great for a combat gun. They were just overbuilt, to begin with. So, which makes it an awesome platform to, survive, constant full auto fire, is overbuild the hell out of the thing. Because they had, fatter trunnions on almost everything, thicker receivers. The barrels on those things were always like massively oversized. They were usually heavily overbuilt. Only bitch of those things is when you pull the barrels out of them, every one of them galls. Every time you pull a barrel out of one of those things, I don't care where it's done, it always, they were always galled when they came out of them. So every time you get a barrel pull out of them, there's a while when you could get those kits, like I said, with barrels in them. You're like, all right, cool, perfect. You press the pin out. You're like, I can press this out so I can rivet it in, and press the barrel and it just galls the shit out of it. So you have all these little scars all over the barrel where it goes into the trunnion.
And it made it so bad that you had to machine it before you could put it back together, or
not so bad. It just it's a beauty thing. It wasn't where it's seated, so it wasn't that big a deal. But it's just when it pressed out, if you pulled the bolt back, you look down and you see this, scarring on the barrel. You're like, ugh, what happened there? You're like, just as they press out, they tear themselves up.
Now it's been a while since, I forget what year anymore, but a while since barrels have been around. So do you see very many kits come in from people with barrels anymore that you have to pull, or is it mostly popular fresh barrels?
They usually are fresh, or the stubs. We get a lot of them that they got a demill kit, so the stub's still hanging out of it. It's been torch cut, but every once in a while we'll get a kit that somebody's, what was it?
You really can't do nothing with the stub though. It's like
no. It's yank it out, pull it out and get it out of there. But we still every once in a while we had one actually in not long ago that was Romanian G kit, and it had the original barrel still with it. And it's like, all right, perfect. These are nice gun. You press it out and you're good to go. But yeah, the Yugo kits usually they were almost all barrel chops out of those ones. So you don't really see that.
I remember most of the Yugo stuff being just parts. Like I didn't remember too many, but I wasn't. When I was collecting, it was mostly Polish, Bulgarian, and Romanian. I didn't really see too many other countries' kits ever. And I saw a MAK90 kit one time at a gun show where it was all like on a piece of cardboard and kind of shrunk onto it.
Yep.
Have you ever seen that? Was that a real thing, or was that something?
Yeah, there's actually a company in Nevada that actually I don't know if he was getting police trade-in guns or what, but he for a while had those MAK90s and they were, if they've been shot, I don't know how many rounds, very few guns. Yeah, very few rounds. And he would chop them up, and like you said, it was on a piece of cardboard and blister packed down on it, and everything was there, and it all was in cherry condition. And I was,
Yeah, that's what it was. It was so cherry that I was like, "What is this?
yeah,
Like a factory virgin kit or something?" And I didn't trust it, so I was
yeah,
like,
it was,
a
yeah. I
real
don't know where he was getting them from, but he for a while there had a lot of MAK90s, some Bulgarian stuff, and every once in a while he'll pop up with something new. But he's got a lot of like oddball stuff where you're like, is this like a police trade-in or something? I mean, it's you're buying out police inventories when they got to get rid of the guns or something. He's sometimes got some really oddball stuff on there.
And that's sometimes some of the fun is, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to start chatting with people, is to hear some of these stories that people might not think. A lot of times you'll, especially with AKs and ARs, people go, oh, those are whatever connotation, whatever the impression they've got of them, and they just brush them aside to go worry about their carry gun or whatever. But there's such interesting stories to all this stuff. And a lot of it has to do with the gun shows and the importers and the compliance with laws and the ways that these things were built and complied with laws to bring them here and stuff. So I appreciate all this insight. And can we go a little bit further? We still have some questions here. I don't want to keep you up all night.
Yeah, no problem.
Appreciate everybody joining us live. It's not really that late for us. It's only 8:30 for us. So I know a lot of people are staying up kind of late for this one. I had no idea when to do a show like this, so I did it on a Sunday. So give me some feedback, everybody, if I continue to have interviews with builders, what day I should do it on, because it's not like an AK day of the week that I know of. The next question was from Smeggy in California. 47 or 74? Do you have one that you prefer?
Me all the way, 47 all the way for me. I like that big 7.62 round. I mean, for me, you go with how the evolution of the bullet was. Back when we all started first trying to kill each other, we were using 308s, 8mm, 7.62 by 54R. We were shooting a long distance, trying to hit each other across a giant battlefield. And when you hit somebody, you want to kill them, blow them apart in a million pieces. One shot, one kill kind of thing. And then when we got closer, we started using like the 30 carbine and the 7.62 by 3.9. And then they started figuring out, if I wound the guy, A, he's out of commission, and B, his buddy's got to come get him too. So then we started doing like the 5.56 and 5.45, where it's a little bit more of a, it won't blow your arm off, but it's definitely going to jack you up pretty good. And there's a good chance your buddy's going to have to drag you off the battlefield. But I happen to personally like the 7.62 by 3.9 round better. I think it's got better penetration for hard, hard targets where you got to go through a wall or a door, or a car door, or a windshield or something like that. I happen to personally like the 7.62 by 3.9 better. I know there's going to be a few who are the 5.45 poison bullet guys, and they love them all to hell. And yeah, they do shoot a lot flatter. But me personally, I happen to like the 7.62 better.
Right on. I'm right there with you. They built them to kill us and kill everybody. But, the 74 is more of a modern thing. I was into the bayonets for a long time. I felt like I had everything except an AIM 74 bayonet. And then I got a Valmet bayonet finally. And then I also got a Chinese KM81 or whatever it is, 83. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, I'm done. Like there was only literally one more bayonet at the time that I could know of that I could get minus like a crazy variant. So I was like, I've done this. And in the bayonet people I had experienced, like I kind of mentioned, we had a real fun experience on the internet with collecting AKs for a while. Just a lot of people on the various forums, mainly the AK forum and AK47.net back in the day. Like I'm sure you were on those. That was like a collective of lots of people, and it was just a fun time. Then YouTube came around and kind of killed forums in general, and people getting into AKs and just getting into sport shooting and the end of the assault weapons ban, it just changed the times or whatever. But anyhow, getting into the debates and stuff, I've kind of left the AKs because the bayonets, because like I say, I kind of felt like I got them all, and it's kind of huge to have a giant AK bayonet collection. It takes a whole wall. So as much as I was trying to get away from having a large physical collection of guns, the bayonet collection got pretty big. So I've been selling off the collection and going into ammo. So I'm collecting the 7.62 by 39 ammo. I had a chance to check out a really awesome collection at one point to see just how many variety, the type of variety there is, and it's something that I'll be able to collect the rest of my life. But I'm with you. 7.62 by 39. to me is just as exciting as collecting the AKs, because you've got, you know, the whole research and people that are interested in it that you can, you know, find and then go into gun shows and seeking out the specimens. I'm looking forward to that. But anyway, I guess I'm with you at the 7.62 by 39. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I just happen to like I like the round better. I think it's more for what I do.
Smeggy asked another question. What do you think about 922R and the bans on the different import bans we've had, like the 7.62 by 39 ban, and then the barrel ban, and then the I guess, yeah, they did ban 5.45, and then the ban on Russian stuff. I mean, obviously you've had to deal with these, but is there any feelings on this or insight?
I don't know. It's the old deal of, you know, in my opinion, they're trying to solve a problem that's never going to be solved. It's, you know, once you start trying to ban, they're trying to ban, you know, 922R. Okay, those parts really make a big difference on whether the gun is deadlier, you know, with an original trigger group or not, with those, you know, 6 pieces changed out. Does it really make the gun any less deadly or more deadly? I mean, I don't know what they're trying to make, if they're trying to get like money from the manufacturers or what on that stupid thing, because it doesn't make the gun less deadly having 6 parts in it that are U.S. made. You know, and banning the barrels. Okay, well, it's not a machine gun barrel. Like as I was told, you know, you can't bring in a barrel that's ever been with a machine gun. You can't have machine gun barrels. But the barrel's sitting over here in a pile with a bunch of other barrels. You could bring that in because that's just a barrel. You know, but these ones over here have touched a machine gun, so you can't have those because those are machine gun barrels. Really? Does it really make that big a difference?
That's how they got them off of parts kits, because they were part of a machine gun, so you couldn't bring in those barrels. But these virgin barrels that nobody's used before, import all you want.
They're just barrels. So it's like, really, does that really make the barrel less deadly? No. I mean, it's, you know, you get politicians and people who just don't like what we have here in the United States, and so they'll try anything. You know, well, we're going to ban this, we're going to ban that. You know, we're going to ban the 5.45. It's a more deadly bullet. You know what? There's people who get killed at 22 all the time. You know, there's people get killed with pellet. There's guys who hunt wild boar, those big, massive, you know, I'm not exactly sure how many, you know, 1,000-pound boars with pellet guns, with a goddamn air gun. They're killing these big ass boars, you know, shooting crocodiles and shit with a pellet gun. Yeah, it's not a, you know, your average pellet gun. That's, you know, it's like your Daisy pellet gun.
Yeah, exactly.
But they're shooting with an air gun, you know. So, you know, people are going to be able to make anything deadly. I mean, look at that. I hate to say it. Look at that. I think it was the Japanese prime minister or something like that. He got shot by a guy with a damn zip gun. The guy made a gun out of whatever pieces he could and shot the guy. You know, if people want to do evil, they'll figure out how to do evil. Doing, you know, stuff to ban it's not going to stop it. If you really, okay, I'm going to get up my soapbox here. In my personal opinion, not my business, my personal opinion is the correct route to go is teaching people. You know, knowledge is king. When you have the knowledge, you can use it for correct things. Are banning guns going to solve the problem? No. Bad guys will get guns no matter what. You know, either from right means or wrong means or making them themselves, they're always going to have guns. So, okay, what do we do? How do we teach these kids not to go into schools and shoot each other? Well, we need, in my personal opinion, you need to have, you know, knowledge of firearms. Hey, you know, Mike, I have kids. They know don't touch any gun in the house. No gun unless it's your toy guns. You don't pick up any of daddy's guns. You know, regardless of where you see them or find them, you don't touch them. You know, they all know don't touch anything. It's not for touchy time. Even if it's a, you know, pile of parts, don't touch. You know, they know, and I've been teaching them from day one about this. You know, don't touch, be careful. This is a dangerous thing. It can hurt you. No different than a knife. If you have a Bill Butcher knife sitting on the counter, you're not going to, you know, wave it around your head. You're going to get, you know, you might cut yourself, dumb shit. You know, hey, this, you know, if the stove's got flames coming out, you're not going to put your hand on the stove. Hey, it's hot. You're going to get hurt. You know, it's kind of a little bit common sense and, you know, self-accountability.
Somebody said, oh, we shouldn't teach kids about stoves because stoves are bad. We would look at them like, what's wrong with you? You're endangering that child. Right.
Yeah. That's the old thing of, you know, it's the same thing of, you know, do you teach your kid about sex and drugs and all that? Well, they're going to figure it out anyways. I hate to tell you this. we all were kids once, and we all did everything because we're kids. We're going to try it. So I'd rather have my kids go, hey, okay, yes, hey, we found a gun. Now I know this thing is dangerous and I should leave it alone. But if they touched it, they know, don't, the basic things, ever treat every gun that's loaded. Don't put your finger on the trigger till you're ready to use it. Look behind what you're aiming at, because that's going to destroy whatever you point that gun at is going to destroy it. You gotta teach these kids and adults too. There's a generation of adults that are, in their 30s and 20s that don't really have any sort of firearms experience. They don't know very much. So they get, you watch the news and you hear these people saying, "Oh, it's a assault rifle 15." That's not what an AR-15 means, dude. Oh, it's a high capacity clip with 30 rounds a minute. You're like, that's okay. That's not what it does. But they're fed this information that they don't know the truth, because that's what they're fed on the media. So they get the scared thing about a gun. Well, a gun's just like any other tool. It's no different than a hammer, a screwdriver, a drill. It can be used for evil if you want to be. I mean, you could use a hammer for evil. You could massacre people and bash them in the head with a damn thing. But oh no, but you could use it and put a nail in too. So it's you have to have self accountability, and that's what I think is lost in this world we're in now. Is people don't want to take responsibility. Well, why'd that guy do that? Maybe he's just an a-hole and did it. What kind of drugs are you pumping into this kid? I mean, when I was a kid, my parents they took me to a doctor. I was a hyper little kid. The doctor told parents, don't feed him as much candy, he'll be fine. Let him run around outside, he'll burn off his energy. Now, unfortunately, we're getting told, hey, my kid's hyper. Oh, here, start pumping him full of these drugs. Maybe as a kid, we're all hyper. Go outside, run around. Stop playing video games and go run around and chase your friends. Go ride your bike, everywhere, but we don't want to do that. So anyways, back off to the thing. So really the banning the parts and that stuff really doesn't, apart from being a U.S. manufacturer, it makes it great for us because you got to buy our parts, but it's not really making the gun any less deadly or whatever they're trying to prove by having this 924-hour compliancy. What it's trying to do, apart from just make a U.S. manufacturer more money. Because, okay, you got to make your 6 parts. Well, you're going to buy a U.S. trigger group, which really are a lot better. I mean, the U.S. trigger groups are a lot more nice than the original Commblock triggers. They're pretty nasty, apart from the Chinese. Now you got to change a barrel, which, well, the kits are all cut up anyway, so you're not going to get a good barrel. So we change the barrel out, put a receiver, and then you got one more part, which is, gas piston or muzzle device, or, if you want to, only use US mags, throw one of those in there. But it's like, none of those parts really make the gun less dangerous for anybody or less chance of you hurting somebody. If you're going to do it, you're going to do it.
Right on. So you mentioned a bunch of stuff there. I appreciate it. Again, I didn't give you these answers or the questions ahead of time. So I appreciate answering these on the fly. And that was an awesome answer to that. Because again, I agree. I think that with understanding and education, what you get is people that aren't unaware and having accidents. And we see that with the lack of firearms accidents, because it's pretty easy for people to, walk away from a thing or to learn how to check if it's loaded and to use the safety rules and stuff. But yeah, that's awesome answer. When you talked about the things like the U.S. trigger groups being a nicer trigger group, I mean, I'm assuming that means they're made better and they've just put more time into it. So it's like the trigonometry and the angles and stuff are more thought out, and for it to be semi-auto and not like hobbled together or quickly made like the original ones were. But the things like the barrel, are they better when they're U.S. made, or would you say like the original barrels, if we had a way to get like Yugo and Polish and Bulgarian barrels here, would you rather use a sourced barrel or a U.S. barrel?
Really, I mean, it would matter on who was making it. So yeah, unfortunately now, if you were going, okay, we can get, new barrels from, say, Poland. Can we get new barrels from them? Are they really being made to the specs of when Poland was a Commblock country, where they just, they really were worrying about the end of the world coming? Because that was, like I said, hammer forged barrels are a very good barrel. They start out with a big piece of metal, pound it down so that the molecules are really tight in there, really close together, makes it a stronger barrel. So really, if I could get like what I call old world military barrels, I would like to use those because they are very good. Yeah, they are. If you're going to shoot suppressed, definitely bore check your gun before you try it, because they are sometimes out of round. But what I mean by that is like
they're not
suppressor hole.
concentric. The middle
Yeah,
hole,
not concentric.
the
Yeah,
outside diameter, and that's because they weren't suppressing them. They couldn't care,
yeah,
right? They care less.
yeah. They would. They had, that wasn't their. Their thought wasn't that. I mean, they weren't going to throw suppressors on all these guns. They were. They had the slant brake or no brake at all, just a muzzle nut, and there you go. There you go. Here you go, peasant. Go out there and go be a conscript. So they didn't really worry about them being totally, concentric. They weren't worried about that. But yeah, a real what I call old world barrel is very good. I would like to have those.
And then we Smeggy had asked about 922R, and I haven't even thought about it in forever. But when we're talking 922R in 1968, they decided, and a lot of people will debate on whether or not the firearms manufacturers were in this or not, but they decided guns from the military are somehow not sporting, therefore they shouldn't be imported. And how do we know if a gun's sporting or not? We're going to come up with a checklist. What a great idea. And if it meets all these characteristics on the checklist, then it can be imported or it can't be imported. So they came up with some parts. They decided these are the parts of a gun, even though every gun has different parts. So they just randomly decided some things were called gun parts. One of them was receiver and trunnion and things that we know, barrel and handguard and trigger and stuff. But when we're talking 922R, if I remember correctly from this is kind of rusty from you, there's like 5 parts. When we're talking about building a U.S. gun, we're almost always talking about a U.S. receiver. Nowadays, we're talking a U.S. barrel. You mentioned the trigger parts. In reality, that's like 3 parts in the 922R. So that's, or is that 3? Is it just 2?
Yeah, no, that's 3 parts.
Okay, so you got your barrel, receiver, and trigger. You need 6 parts though. And
yeah, there's 6 parts total.
If you're going to have a muzzle brake, like a muzzle brake, you might as well, if you want your muzzle brake to be 4 and you got to replace it with a U.S. part somewhere else. But basically, that's where the teeter-totter was. So for us back in the day, we had barrels, like we had old barrels, we had real barrels. So we couldn't take the barrel as a U.S. part, and we were changing out gas pistons because they were hidden. And then almost always we would try to get a U.S. pistol grip, because that was something in our hands anyway, or we could get one that looked like, I forget, a couple of companies made U.S. plastic ones that looked kind of right. But nowadays with the U.S. parts and stuff, is it even an issue, or is it like most people are just using U.S. mags? So, or is 922R a thing anymore? Is what I guess I'm getting at, or am I missing?
It is. It is very much a thing. We every year we pretty much have a audit by the ATF where they just come in and make sure we're doing everything up to par. And that was one of the things they were checking. They were looking at a gun that we were currently assembling, and the IO, which is inspecting agent, I asked, hey, okay, prove this is 922R. You said you're building from a parts kit. What have you changed? And true ATF, they didn't know how many parts were supposed to be changed and what had to be changed. But I explained to them, hey, here we go. Here, here's trigger group. Here's 3 parts. Here's, I was putting a KNS gas pistons. Here's gas piston, receiver, barrel, muzzle brake. So I'm actually at 7 pieces. Oh, okay. And off they went. That they checked it off whatever list they had they were working with, and off they went their thing. So they do still ask. I mean, truly, I've never heard of anyone ever being asked by any sort of government agency or police or anything like that, hey, prove what 922R parts you have on your gun. Who would never really know anymore? What is, once you code everything, what's an original barrel, original receiver, gas pistons, a lot of them say, yeah, you made in the US, and muzzle brakes do say that, and trigger groups. There's a couple of trigger groups that look just like original Commblock ones. You can't tell them apart.
No, and that's interesting. I didn't know that they'd ever even ask, but like you said, when they said they didn't know, people that might think, oh, well, come on, they don't even know. But here's the thing, like all AKs aren't even the same. Like an AK and a Sega are different because the Sega has a different part. I forget what it was. Like they have a different thing in their piston or something. So a piston on a Sega is a puck or something, right? So like there's different counts. I remember an SKS is different, but we're talking Kalashnikov, so the ATF has to deal with every gun. So yeah, like PPSH and a SKS and everything else all has its own just because again they came up with gray area laws. It's their own fault. But anyhow, that's an awesome answer. I appreciate it. And again, we're kind of playing all around here. So if we're talking about stuff that's outside your realm, sorry, but dig into guns. It's fun. And for people that are enjoying this, let's take a second and chat about what it is, because I know a couple of people joined us here. Clayco is out there. Haven't seen that name in a while. Thanks for jumping in. DJ asked who we're talking to, so he must have missed the beginning. We're talking to M13. John's a gunsmith manufacturer in Las Vegas, predominantly Kalashnikovs, but you build from parts kits, you repair and build, modify existing guns, but also maintain, I don't know what you want to get into as far as like relationships, but I know I'm assuming a couple of different the rental ranges in Vegas. You help with their extreme maintenance. I'm assuming they have their own armorers, but when it gets to a point where they need you, they call you in to
they usually have a couple armorers who do the cleans, the visual inspections and stuff like that, but they don't, they're trying to watch their P's and Q's and how much money they're spending, so they don't want to pay a gunsmith to be on staff doing that stuff. So when they have like a major issue, they'll pull the gun off line and then bring it to us and say, hey, this is what it's doing, and can you look at it? And they're in true gun range world, they'll show up at 7 o'clock in the morning and wonder if you could have it online by 9 o'clock that same morning and fixed. And because they're trying to make their dollars. I mean, they got huge groups coming in. For a while there, we were getting a lot of the Asian tourism was coming in, and a lot of those, they were selling them packages. So they would come in with 1 or 2 or 3 bus loads of these people from Asia, and they wanted, they don't have those rights over there, so of course they want to shoot a machine gun. They've heard about them, maybe seen them in a couple of movies, but they never even get to hold them or shoot them or anything like that. So they would come in with these bus loads of ones and just massacre every gun they have, because it's just round out mag after mag after mag after mag, and they'd break things, and the next day they'd bring a whole other load in that's broken, and how fast can you have these fixed and up and running again? So we got a lot of variation of guns coming in of these ranges where they break them, and like I said, machine guns are mechanical things. I have never seen any machine gun that it would survive in one of these ranges. I don't care who makes it, everything has died. We've seen almost every part of a gun break. Some break way easier than other ones. Some break way hard, take a longer time to break, but it's a mechanical part, and you're shooting it. It's gonna die eventually. It just is what it is.
I mean, they're all designed to be used. So the first half, they're designed to be rugged because they know they're going to be just dragged around and given lifespans that are not in use. Like they're normally just dragged around, so they have to live through all that. They have to be rugged. But then, like you say, normally you're using them in bursts, and they have time to cool off, and you change barrels, and the person is running it is educated and is trying to maintain the machine. At Vegas, they don't have time for that stuff. They're taking it to the extremes. One of the things, I guess, since you were mentioning that, does anybody shoot, or are there any Maduses up there?
Oh yeah, definitely. So, they don't have as many.
I'm thinking indoors, but there's the outdoor ranges too, and there's probably
they'll shoot them indoors too. There's a couple of them that have Barretts that they shoot indoors, the semi-auto and full bolt action 50 caliber Barretts, and they'll shoot M2s inside all the time. There's not quite as many because they have to really build up their backstops, because that's a big bullet coming at it pretty quick. So they really have to dedicate it to it.
It's still a big bullet.
Yeah. So then a lot of them they also don't. If you notice, I'm pretty sure was it Battlefield Vegas? I know has one, but they've got it pretty well chained down so that you can't wander around with it. But when you're shooting, you're only got a little bit of movement to actually shoot the thing, because they don't want you messing up and shooting right through the roof or right into the wall or something, because it's a big bullet's going to bust through some stuff. So they definitely they definitely have Maduses and chain guns and all sorts of crazy things over there.
Awesome. And we're not really plugging them, but yeah, definitely Vegas. You can, they started it, I'd say. I mean, I'm sure other places had it, but there are definitely other parts of the country now that have rental machine gun stuff. So if you haven't ever thought of it, consider a vacation, or to consider next time you're in Vegas to check out one of the machine gun places. It's totally worth it. I dig a lot of them. There's a lot of different ones there.
There's a lot of them, and there's a lot of them that you've seen these guns, you've heard about them, you've never got to actually hold them or shoot one. And there's there's quite a few ranges that have some very unique pieces and some stuff that you're pretty much, unless you go somewhere specialized, you're not going to be able to shoot these guns because they're just not out there. They're not at the usual. Your buddy goes, "Hey, let's go shooting," and then he happens to whip out a SGG 44. Yeah, here we go, man. It's full auto. You're not going to see that stuff, out in the desert, with your buddies going shooting or something like that. So I mean, some of these places, this is where you're going to be able to shoot it, and it's in a air conditioned place, ventilation. The range masters are good. You're going to be safe, and you can try. You do packages, and you can shoot some very unique guns, and it's well worth it. I mean, if you got the time, a little extra cash, totally hit them up. Hey, you can call them on the phone. Hey, there's a bunch of them to choose from. Hey, man, you got this particular gun? I've always wanted to shoot this gun. Yeah, we've got 1, 2, 5, 10 of them. Yeah, come on down. It's however much, $100, $120 to shoot this gun, one mag. And yeah, it's a lot of money, but where else are you gonna be able to shoot that damn gun?
And one of the things that I might try to recommend to people too, when you're thinking about this, a lot of people think machine gun. Okay, think a motorcycle. If you were going to drive a motorcycle, okay, but wait a minute, are you driving a Harley? Are you driving a crotch rocket? Are you driving an old chopper? Are you driving an enduro? Each of those is a different experience, and that's what it's like when you're shooting machine guns. Shooting a little 9mm high cyclic rate versus a Thompson versus an M16 versus a PKM. It's like riding different motorcycles, and you can really see what these different machines do and the way that they're going to load them, all that part of it, is the way that they operate, the complicated, like the AK-47 is, I forget how many parts, it's very few parts compared to, I don't know, do you know which is the most complicated gun you deal with?
Anything German?
Yeah, usually German guns, right, are the most. Like,
Germans or Czechoslovakian. Czechoslovakians love to have one part do 10 things.
Oh, really?
Like, like the VZ58s and VZ61s. Anytime you touch anything, like their springs always do like 3 or 4 different things. You're like, oh, this spring just does. No, it doesn't. It does this, this, and this. Oh, wow. It holds this down and does this. And you're like, they were very much, the Czechoslovakians were very uniquely designed guns. The ones I've dealt with, they always were very thoughtful on how many pieces can you omit by making one part do multiple things, and they work great. I mean, I tell you,
do they sacrifice design for that? Like, do the gun? Because I know that isn't the dentist one of theirs a pistol, that machine pistol that reciprocates right back in your face? And is it like that? Do they sacrifice in order to get that?
No, I mean the two that I deal a fair amount with would be the VZ58, which is their full size rifle, shoots 7.62 by 3.9, and then the VZ61, which is their company called the Scorpion, a little machine pistol. Both of those, I mean, they are very good guns, very well built. The VZ58 is to date the fastest shooting 7.62 by 3.9 gun I've ever shot in full auto. It has been it's been the fastest one I've ever shot. It actually surprised me the first time I shot one. I was like, wow, that was fast. I mean, and then their little Scorpion machine pistol, usually with a 20-round mag, you could have all the rounds up in the air before the first one hits the ground. Yeah. It's 20-round mag, but it shoots really super fast. Same thing. Very fast cycle rates.
I've seen Scorpions shoot, and they burp so fast that it's almost not even interesting. I mean, it's interesting to shoot, but again, it's interesting, but it's like a whole skill you have to come up with to shoot that gun.
Yeah.
I didn't know that about, I don't think I've ever shot, or at least I've been to Big Sandy. I must have been around a VZ58 shooting full auto, but I guess I never paid attention to their cyclic rate. And is it because it's aluminum, or is it just a design thing? Or
no, it's a design. It goes, well, it's an AK. Nope. Apart from the round, that's about the only thing they share with an AK, and the shape of a magazine. Yeah, it was kind of, I would love to know how they got away from, as I was always told, Russia basically said, this is what we're building. You're allowed to modify it a little bit, but you have to be able to, to be basically an AK, to be an AK. Well, it's almost like the Czechoslovakians went, yeah, that's nice. We like your round, but everything else sucks. We're going to go and make our total other gun, because nothing in a VZ will crisscross to an AK. I mean, everything is different. Even the muzzle nut is a different thread pitch. It's right instead of left-hand thread. And it shoots 7.62 by 3.9, but it doesn't take the regular mag. It's a totally different mag. It's made of aluminum and has a bolt hold open device in it. You know, it's the furniture is big or a style of like Bakelite beaver barf. You know, completely different. You know, everything about them is like way different, and it's cool because it's they're completely different. But how'd they get away with that?
Technically, like it'll fit in your mag pouch, but that's about it. Like our magazine will
Yeah.
fit in your mag pouch, and that's it. But and I think that's when, as you mentioned, that's one of the other things that I always found fascinating about the Soviet stuff, because they basically bullied a bunch of these countries that they took over, and other countries were like, yes, sir. So you look at like the Germans and the Bulgarians, and they were like, especially in the beginning, they were essentially like, hey, can we make this any closer to what you want, sir? Like, we'll make it as close to, and then after a while, they were like, more and more, we'll do what we want. And then eventually, screw you, we're doing our own guns. And then the Chinese, they had their own pace of that. And then some of the other countries were, well, they all have their own story. So that's another, almost like a political thing. Let me ask this. Charlie Wilson's War, just totally off course. Charlie Wilson's War, what's your, just throwing that out there. Any opinions on that, or does that one ever come up in your experience?
The which one?
Charlie Wilson's War. It's a book and a movie.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it definitely makes you wonder. I don't know.
I bring it up for me. What I thought was interesting about that one is there's a point in there where they talk about how when we were helping the Mujahideen or whatever, we were looking for AKs to use against the Russians, but we didn't want to buy them from the Russians. We couldn't, I guess. And where are we going to get them? So we ended up getting them from Egypt through Israel. And that's the kind of stuff that, again, like, you can try to figure that out, but really somebody has to know about all that and then let the information out there. It has to get around the internet. And that part of it is a part of AKs that's hard to describe, but it's part of the lore or the culture, the community that, you keep finding layers. Maybe that's the way to say it. And I was just wondering if you had dealt with any of that or any of those guns.
Well, like I said, those Polish kits that I got in for like about a year or so ago, that all the manufacturer marks were removed off them. They were supposedly destined for somewhere, and then they weren't allowed to be that thing. So that's probably what it was somebody went, hey, we need 30,000 AKs. Well, Poland's like, yeah, no problem, but you gotta get rid of these marks so they don't know we gave them to you or sold them to you. Whether or not anyone can identify them as Polish, but it doesn't have the original mark, so it's not a real Polish gun. And then somewhere they got stopped, and then obviously got chopped up into parts kits. But that kind of stuff. Oh, I'm sure it happens more than we admit to.
And then it's trying to discover that, and then maybe 10 years later somebody will say, oh, this is what it was, and now we can all update our knowledge bases of okay, we can add that to the mix. For me, I was doing this through the bayonets, but I knew that this had the bigger implications through the parts kits and the guns and stuff. And I've talked about a bunch of stuff here. I really appreciate you spending 2 hours with us now. I think I caught all the questions that people have been asking. I know I did this kind of late for the East Coast, so if you're listening to this in the future or on a podcast or something, let us know. You can contact M13 through Instagram. I think it's the one you use the most, but you've got a YouTube and you've got a website. Is there any other ways that you want to do a plug or let people know how they can get?
Yeah, you can hit us up through emails or like I said, Instagram. We try to answer them as fast as possible. Sometimes we'll get a plethora of them in at one time, and there's one or two guys that we try to answer all the questions, and sometimes we'll miss them. So don't take offense to it. We're not trying to blow you off. Send us another one. Hey, circling back to this, or give us a couple days, then try to hit us back. If you haven't heard anything in a week, in 7 days, there's something wrong. We might have missed it, or spam filter got crazy and grabbed it, or whatever. Just try it again. We'll try to answer questions as quickly and easily as we can. On we get random people who ask us, hey, what do you think about this, or I saw that, or can this be done? We try to do our best to answer them to what we think is a safe and way to do things, because we get some crazy things sent to us. Every time we post a machine gun up, we always get how much to make my gun a machine gun. I'll say it right now. We will not do it unless you have the licensing for it, because I don't want to go to jail and you don't either. So don't ask me to do it. I won't do it on the side or anything like that. But I mean, yeah, just, any of those methods, hit us up and we'll, see if we can help you out and get you going the right way.
That's awesome. So we don't have to end it right this quick. And whenever I end this, we'll still chat off air just a bit because we haven't chatted before, but it doesn't actually end when I end the broadcast. But I appreciate you giving the contact info there. We're not going to necessarily just to cut it abruptly here. I wanted to take a second though and just kind of let everyone who might be listening to this now or in the future soak this in. When I started getting into this stuff in 2004, there was barely an internet. There was an internet, but it wasn't anywhere like what we've got today. So there wasn't the resources we've got available to us. So when I started getting into AKs, I would go to gun shows and talk to people at gun shops and, talk to a couple of people online. But what I ended up with is a group of friends, a group of people in a club that did use Yahoo message groups or something back in the day. Yahoo, it was a horrible Yahoo thing to connect to each other. And we kept close where we were able to get together, and then we'd go to the SAR show and meet up. So I was very lucky because I happen to live here in Arizona, and the SAR show is a small arms review gun show that happens in Phoenix each year, brought together a bunch of people who are hobbyists in the full auto realm, and that brought together a bunch of Kalashnikov people. And because a bunch of Kalashnikov people got together, this collectors group got together, the KCA, and I was able to join that. So I was able to kind of have an extract or a bunch of connections with gun people and gunsmiths, and I was doing stuff online, and that gave me an excuse to talk to people as kind of like media or a reporter or whatever you want to call it. So people would talk to me where I didn't have necessarily a parts kit to do business with them with, right? So back in the day, the reason I'm explaining all this is I've been around for a bit watching this stuff, and back in the day, if you didn't know someone to help you build, you were out of luck. You were building on your own. And then there was a time, I'm going to say for a good 8 years there, where the builders were not necessarily friendly with each other because no one knew what was going on and where it was going and what it would turn into. And the internet was doing its thing, and everybody had, their own things going on. And for whatever reasons, there was a bit of, there was not a lot of communication going on, and you were there was a little clicky. And then changed again, and I'd say about 2010 to 14, I'm guessing, where people got a little bit more understanding of the internet and got more comfortable, and knowledge wasn't held on to. Knowledge was shared a little bit better. The forums transitioned into online stuff and things, people were more accustomed to the internet. We live in a time in 2022 when the resources that are available to you are better than they've ever been. The things you can buy, sure, you don't have the opportunity some of us had for a minute there years ago, but you definitely have the results of all that. You have all the parts kits that we've kept on shelves. You've got all the guns that we built that we're selling. You've got all the other pieces and remnants, and you've got the knowledge that we accumulated. But more importantly, you've got the time that everybody's chilled and offered, like they're friendly, and they're like John just offered, the time to chat with them about stuff. That's something that you would have never gotten in the past. And even now, not everybody's got the ability to do that. So I just wanted to take a long minutes there to just let that sink into folks that might be listening to that's not just a casual, like, hey, contact us. You guys on M13, one of the reasons I've been such a fan is your Instagram page. You share your builds and the fun stuff you're doing. Every once in a while, a challenge or a difficulty, but more often than not, something interesting. Like the other day when you showed the rear trunnion you drilled through, like it's a freaking cylinder. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that a couple of people, I know some people are going to really appreciate that. And then you're offering that glimpse for people that are still coming up, that are new gun owners. Maybe they bought their first gun for self-defense. They figured out that they could buy a shotgun to go have fun with. And now they're looking around and seeing what else is out there. Who knows if they're going to be gunsmiths or not, but like giving them that opportunity to see that. The only way you would have seen that in 2008 is to go hang out at a gunsmith's place and look over his shoulder, and you probably still wouldn't appreciate it if you weren't really paying attention. So, the way that you're sharing what you're doing, and you're sharing it with the people today, hopefully they're appreciating it, but in reality, you're archiving this for the future. And whatever we have as far as rights and interest in firearms, we had a whole bunch of guns that were designed for the Cold War. We didn't die. We talked our way out of that. We got along our way out of that. Like we capitalized our way out of that by buying their guns and shooting them recreationally into the hills. And M13, you're a big part of the evolution of that. Like I say, the the gunsmiths of the past, if they wouldn't have had the influence of guys like you, would still be kind of miserly and kind of, holding on to their information. Some of them are still like that. I gotta, admit. But
Which,
there is a new realm in the Kalash Bash and the Red October. I'm sure are a big part of that. You know that more than I do, I'm sure. But I just wanted to take a long time there to kind of say thanks again for the time tonight, but also for just being what you're doing, the way you're doing what you're doing, the way you're doing it. It's awesome, and it's really evolving our community in a way that we didn't have to have it go that way. And I'm guessing you probably didn't sit down and decide it's going to go this way, but you've taken it in a way that's much more open source and creative than it could have gone.
yeah, because I mean, in the end, I mean, I can only build. Me and my company can only build so many guns. But if I can educate some people on some stuff, just so that you buy what I would consider good stuff from quality places of new or original Kalashnikov stuff, so you can get good stuff to begin with. So even if you build it yourself, you send it to another place to have it built, whatever, you're getting the end result of something you're going to enjoy. It doesn't turn into a junk pile that you end up hating and getting out of the platform because these pieces of shit AKs, this thing blew up in at 500 rounds, or it doesn't work very well or whatever. I want to keep people from doing that and going, hey, yeah, it may not be an AR, but they're their own unique thing. It's great because it's this unique thing. And so people have to see the weird stuff we see. I mean, we see so much stuff, and unfortunately, a lot of us don't forward the information because we see it so often, or we're just trying to get it fixed so the other guy could get it on. So I try to remember to go, hey, we're seeing a lot of this. Let's forward the information on to other people so that they can look at their stuff and to see, hey, we noticed this particular part's wearing weird. Take a good look at yours because yours may be wearing weird also. And oh wow, yeah, it is. Just because knowledge, like I said, knowledge is king. If you get the knowledge, you can do amazing things. So if we could pass it on, good. People can learn from us. I hope so.
Right on. I've been trying to scroll through your Instagram here and screen sharing, but my computer's kind of glitching out on me. But I think people are getting an idea, as you kind of were saying there, about the kind of stuff that you're showing and sharing. And again, with the knowledge base that you've got and the group of people that are out there, I'm sure they appreciate it. But I just wanted to make that kind of clear, because I guess some people that might be listening to this aren't Kalashnikov people and aren't really paying attention to that kind of nuance of the community. And again, it wasn't that long ago that someone with a gunsmith with the knowledge base you're getting, could have just as easily said, in order to talk with me, it's X amount of time and X amount of dollars, and when I get around to it, you'll get a gun with my signature on it. And again, appreciate it. I did get a question from Cash again earlier, and we kind of talked about this a little bit, I think, off air. If I can scroll up to it here. And if I missed anybody's questions who's still alive, let me know if I'm missing them. But, you know what? I can click over here. Now that I'm screen sharing, everything's going slow. But he asked, are you hiring?
Actually, yes, we are. We're currently looking for a gunsmith. What we're kind of looking for, unfortunately, we don't have a position for somebody who's just starting out. I'm sorry. We don't need that right now. I need somebody with some skill base. We are expanding, and we've got some new things on the next horizon coming up, and I need a gunsmith. And what I mean by that is somebody who can, who has already gun knowledge, has built guns before, knows how to use a lathe, mill, welders, stuff like that. So I can basically say, hey, this is our next project, get on it, and I don't have to babysit them. So yes, we are looking for that. We're actively looking. Actually, we just posted up today saying we're looking for one because we have a spot that we need filled. So yes, we are definitely hiring.
Right on. And well, you're in Vegas, obviously. Cash isn't, yes. But I don't know how that might work out. But heck, if we helped figure out something there, that's awesome. There are definitely a lot of gunsmiths out there, and the kind of experience you could get at that position, I could imagine being pretty awesome. I've got a question, I guess, as we head out. I've got a Yugo kit that is I consider it a virgin kit. I got it from Arms of America more than likely. back in the day, and it's got no holes in like the rear receiver, and the front receivers got no holes drilled. There's no receiver pieces at all. Like there's holes in the trunnions, but there's gas box and stuff. I can't remember if so in other words, I believe it was a kit where they walked around the floor and just grabbed parts from the bins and then put them in a bag before it was ever assembled. Is that worth more or less? Should I be expecting more or less from that one? Is that something that's in demand, or is that something that only the expert can put together?
So it would take a little bit more effort to put together than a seasoned kit, just because some of those sharp edges and stuff like that will need to be knocked down, especially where the bolt goes in. Usually you got to knock down some sharp edges on there to make it smoother as it works. Really, is it more desirable for the market? Yes, definitely, because it's never been shot to death, hasn't been beat up. It's a little bit harder for a guy to build because it is a quote unquote virgin kit. So, those little high spots got to be knocked down. So, I mean, I always like virgin kits because it's kind of neat. You get to see, okay, we've taken apart, dozens and dozens of well-used guns. Here's a brand new one. What do the wear patterns look like? What did it look like before it was shot? Thousands of rounds. So you kind of get a look at the parts and how they machined them and stuff like that. So you can get a database in your head of, well, this is what it came like originally, and now this is what it looks like. Wow, this metal is really soft, or this metal is very well heat treated, stuff like that. So I like virgin kits. They're cool.
Okay, well, I can definitely then. I'm okay if I let people know they can send it your way if they win it. Whoever wins it.
Yeah. The only ones we really won't mess with right now are those Slovakian kits. They're virgin kits, but they are completely out of spec on every nick and cranny that they can possibly make those things. Everything's out of whack on them. And we don't want people to send them to us because it's going to cost them so much for us to get it to work that you can buy another kit and a lot cheaper and have a better product. They're just out of whack.
Okay. And is that something that they're making as like there's a demand in the United States, let's fill that demand?
I think, yeah. I don't know that there's a million rumors on where they came from. Supposedly somebody went to these guys and said, hey, can you make these parts? Yeah, sure. And they made them, but they didn't really make them. They're out of spec. Somebody didn't say, hey, you got to hold a tolerance of 1 or 2 thousandths. But just to throw little things, the front rivet holes at the end are not cut into the trunnion, so that the backside of the rivet has somewhere to go, so it's not in the way of the barrel. The barrel bore is completely out of spec for any U.S. made barrel or any barrel you normally can get. The extractors are the wrong length. The extractor springs are incorrect. A lot of them, when they threaded for the gas piston, they're at an angle. So that when you put the gas piston in, it won't go into the gas tube. It drags it across the top of the gas tube. It's got a ton of problems, and like I said, it's just not worth. If you bought one, pawn it off on somebody else and move on and get yourself another kit. Now that new WBP parts that have come out, I think Arms of America is kind of sounds like they're the sole distributor of that stuff. Those actually really are nice. We built several kits out of them. They're really nice stuff.
Right on. Do you think that the future looks bright for kits? Because now that I'm guessing the Cold War stuff is dwindling, the stockpile. So, like, what would it be? Random or whatever, and wherever it is, Barnaul, like whatever the factories are, they're still kicking out parts. Are we still going to see parts coming across just without barrels, or is that going to dry up as well?
I think because of the U.S. market. There's Hungarian kits that are coming in now that are brand new, and then there's the Polish ones that are coming in. I think those will keep coming because we're buying them up and we're using them and we're keep buying them, so they'll keep selling them. The more unique guns, they're not going to make the parts for those because they're just not enough. They can sell 100 to 1, whether it be a regular AK part or one for an AKSU or the Krink gun. They'll sell less of those, so they're not going to make those. They're going to make just regular AK parts. So the unique guns that you've seen that I always wanted to have a blah blah blah, RPK, a Krink, an AIM 74, whatever that. If you get it, you're gonna need to grab the kit now because they're not gonna make those new again. If it does, it would surprise the hell out of me. Just not enough demand for it.
It'll be more because it would be firing up a whole production line, where these other ones like the Polish standard AKM is kind of like the days when we had the G kits, where the reason we like G kits so much, well, they were cheap, but then we could dress them up like anything. They were they were plain standard size everything, so you could dress them up like a German or a Egyptian or pretty much anything. So the Polish are the same form factor. It's like the plain vanilla of AKM platforms. You can dress it up to look like anything with furniture and maybe a gas block.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, it's a good platform to start with, and you could dress it up however you want. And that's what we need. We need the holy trinity of parts: the bolt, bull carrier, and trunnion. We need those to keep constantly coming in of good quality, and that's what's happening. They're coming in, and I personally haven't tried one of the new 545 kits that they've gotten out, but I hear through a couple other builders that they are just like the 762, good quality parts, and you can build on them and expect a very decent service life out of them.
That's awesome, and it's good to hear too, because I'm guessing that means that the ones that are getting eaten up in Vegas are new stuff. They're SOTs, so they can create guns out of brand new stuff. They're not eating up old collectibles all the time. I'm sure they have some old collectibles, but they're not eating up the old collectibles necessarily.
No, a lot of those ones, when they build them up, they're trying to build them, as a lot of them are trying to build them as strong as possible. So yeah, they're building new kits so they can run the hell out of them and try to get as long a life as possible. Or they'll buy already built guns like an Arsenal or Century or something like that and just shoot those. So yeah, they're not. Most of those guys aren't buying the super rare kits because it just takes more effort to put that together and shoot unless they want to throw it in their lineup. Hey, we've had a bunch of Velasquez for a whatever, okay, let's build one up, and so that way we've got it in our arsenal. But most of the time for the ranges, they're buying whatever they can easily access, which is going to be those, either the Hungarian parts or the Polish parts.
I tell you what, I can keep asking questions all night, and I want to try. We're already a little bit over 2 hours, so I'm going to end it. Hopefully, we can chat again because this has been great, and we'll get some feedback from people. But thanks for being the first in potentially a series on talking to Kalashnikov builders. Is there anything that we didn't mention, or I cut you off, or that you thought of, or do you want to mention on the way out before we end it?
No, another reason why one guy asked why the AK. It is the people. I've met a lot of really unique people in the AK market, which are a little more open and friendly. I've done some of the 3-gun stuff, and they're a little. It's going to sound rude and stuff like that, so I apologize if somebody is. They're a little bit more like kind of snotty and don't want to really be friendly towards you. Where the AK crowd, and it really started off with those early, like Red October kind of things. Everyone was out there just to have fun. It was about having fun, and you got an AK, I got an AK too, and when you're at the range and you're shooting one and you hear that unique AK sound, you're like, oh, there's another AK dork out here, cool, and you go running over to go see what they have. I like that about the AK world was there's people were a lot more friendly and sharing of knowledge and hey, look this is what I got too. So that's another reason why I stayed in the AK game was people seem to be more down to earth. Hey, we're in this. We like this platform. It's fun. We're gonna go shoot. You want to go shooting too? Sure, let's go shooting. So keep after it. Keep getting more people into them.
Right on. Thanks again. We'll chat again. I'm going to end it here. We'll chat a little bit offline, but thanks everybody for joining us. And if you like, we have a link going down at the bottom. Our Patreons make it possible for us to spend time doing stuff like this without a bunch of commercials or sponsors. So thanks for making it possible for us to do what we do. A bunch of people buy us a cup of coffee each month. Maybe some of them buy us lunch each month, and that adds up, and it pays for all those servers and all the software and the time for this. So thanks much to everybody, and stay tuned. Tomorrow, we'll be bringing everybody on for the midnight show at midnight Eastern for the Daily Gun Show.